At this elite academy for attack magic, the entire student body agrees on one brutal fact. Healers belong in the absolute trash. But our boy Will totally ignores that. He is literally the most broken healer on the planet, yet he casually strolls into this battle school anyway. The whole campus fully expects him to flop hard. One arrogant professor even sets up a live combat exam just to humiliate him in front of everyone. The second the timer drops, the instructor slams the ground, except Will effortlessly weaves through every single strike, completely abusing his healing spells to permanently buff his agility. The professor nearly crushes him with a massive boulder trap, but Will flips out of the danger zone. Then, he flips the script, closing the gap in a heartbeat and swinging his blade. Predictably, the blade bounces right off. The instructor coats his entire body in thick rock armor, smirking because a squishy healer with 0 attack spells could never scratch him. But Will has an absolutely unhinged backup plan. See, in this universe, normal spellcasters cap their own mana because going all out would literally shred their muscles. Breaking past that physical cap melts human bones. But if our boy rips off that mental limiter, he can detonate a nuclear level of raw force. Sure, it completely obliterates his own flesh, but he literally does not care. Bro can just heal himself anyway. Will rockets forward with a mana-drenched punch. His arm bones explode into dust as he punches a massive hole straight through the professor's unbreakable. The arrogant instructor cannot even blink. He gets put to sleep on the spot. So why exactly is a medic flexing in a combat school? Because in his past life, his squad was absolute garbage, and it got Will brutally taken out. Let us rewind to the original timeline. You would probably assume that carrying the entire team would force your commanders to respect you, right? Yeah, not for our main guy. He literally gets stabbed in the back by his own captain purely because he was way too good at his job. Back then, Will was just a regular dude who happened to possess a ridiculously overpowered recovery quirk, a completely busted skill that no one else on the entire planet had. He could instantly wipe away the most gruesome, fatal wounds like it was an absolute joke. Chopped off your whole arm? 0 sweat. Bro just sprouts a fresh one right out of the bloody stump in a matter of seconds. In that timeline, he was stationed in the blood-soaked trenches with the final surviving unit of humanity. They were clashing against an endless horde of nightmares commanded by Dark Lords, the exact same monsters who burned the kingdom of Granbald to ashes. The remaining troops were throwing their lives away, desperately trying to hold back the apocalyptic swarm that had already wiped the rest of the globe off the map. Since our boy had 0 combat stats, he was assigned to medic duty, basically yanking the dying soldiers straight out of the Grim Reaper's hands. But let us keep it 100. These regular humans were completely outmatched against demonic beasts, crawling straight out of the darkest pits of hell. That is exactly why the frontline fighters kept getting dragged back completely mangled, while Will just kept resetting their health bars without question. But eventually, the trauma mentally breaks the squad. They are absolutely sick of throwing themselves into a meat grinder just to get shredded again. They knew they were completely cooked. Honestly, they would rather just catch an eternal dirt nap and end the nightmare. And that deeply twisted mindset is exactly why Will caught hands from his own commanding officer. The deranged captain screams that Will has 0 clue about the pure psychological torture they go through every single time he heals them, just to throw them back to the slaughter. In the end, the broken platoon simply drops their weapons and abandons the barricades, letting the colossal titans march right in to devour whatever was left of their home. Will is frozen in absolute horror as he watches his entire squad get slaughtered into a bloody pulp right in front of him. Staring at the burning ruins of his city, looking up at a sky-scraping dragon, the sheer terror those infantrymen had been swallowing finally hits him like a freight train. Right then and there, his insanely overpowered healing quirk turned into his most agonizing curse. If only he had invested in some attack stats instead of just playing support, he could have actually vaporized the enemy and kept everyone alive. Fueled by pure, desperate rage to protect his turf, Bro Deadass scoops up a tiny rock from the dirt and aggressively sprints straight at the gigantic dragon. Obviously, trying to solo a boss-level reptile with a literal piece of gravel ends with him getting instantly deleted. But, in peak anime fashion, his eyes snap open to realize he has just respawned exactly 5 years in the past, right before he accidentally locked himself into becoming the globe's top medic, a title that basically doomed his future. Swearing to never become useless baggage again, he ditches the medical route and applies straight to a university built for pure, destructive spellcasting. His top choice? Schwartz Academy. a merciless battleground, obsessed entirely with lethal combat techniques. In this reality, the system is rigged. Support magic and heavy-hitting damage spells are literally impossible to mix. This harsh rule forces all rookie spellcasters to pick one specific class and abandon everything else. But Will is about to completely shatter the meta and conquer the exact thing that got him killed in his previous playthrough. Bro is going to weaponize every single memory from his past life to aggressively power level his own stats. He is building a completely busted dual-class system, guaranteed to kick off his master plan. He needs to secure a spot at the absolute peak of magical education, Schwartz Academy. This legendary institution is famous for forging raw talent into god-tier offensive battle mages. Plus, the absolute strongest battle mage from his previous life practically ruled these halls back in the day. But here is the massive catch. Will is locked into the healer class, meaning waltzing into a combat-heavy academy is practically impossible. Normally, filthy rich nobles just drop bags of cash to secure seats for their clueless kids. But our boy? He is rocking a completely empty wallet right now. Even if he grinds day and night selling his healing services, there is zero chance he can stack enough gold before the admissions window slams shut. While he is stressing over this massive roadblock, the bedroom door swings open, and his sister steps inside. The sheer shock of seeing her breathing and healthy instantly shatters his composure, sending a flood of hot tears, catching him crying. She immediately panics, completely misreading the room and assuming he must be dealing with some lethal stomach cramps. He hastily scrubs the tears away, throwing up a classic bluff about catching a nasty speck of dust in his eye. Deep down, though, his heart is literally racing with pure relief. He quietly swears an ironclad oath to shield her from the brutal tragedy that violently stole her life in the previous timeline. And he is not stopping there. He is dead set on pulling every single person he failed to save out of the crosshairs of destiny. Suddenly, a massive light bulb goes off in his head. The ultimate cheat code has just clicked. But before we dive into his masterstroke, we need to talk about the Magic Academy Federation. Think of them as the top dogs, the absolute authority managing every single Magic Academy scattered across the entire kingdom. They hold all the power, dictating the hardcore rules, intense curriculums, and every standard of magical education. Right now, the big boss calling the shots is also the headmaster of Schwartz Academy. But strangely enough, this high-ranking chairman has completely ghosted his official duties lately. The tragic reason behind his absence? His beloved granddaughter, Marie, was battling a lethal, mysterious illness. For the record, this highly influential, overprotective grandpa goes by the name of Arnold Goldgran. He is the untouchable apex predator of the academic world, holding the dual title of Federation Chairman and Schwartz Principal. Desperate to save her, the heartbroken old man swore he would track down a top-tier healer capable of pulling her out of this agonizing nightmare. Tragically, in Will's past life, the clock ran out. The chairman failed to secure a miracle worker in time, and the poor girl passed away, which is exactly why our absolute madman of a protagonist bypasses all the guards and straight up infiltrates the sick girl's bedroom. Super conveniently, the chairman is already standing watch by the bed, saving our boy the hassle of a long, awkward introduction. The powerful headmaster is already fully aware of this legendary prodigy hailing from the Heilig region, because honestly, Will's god-tier healing, which is why the old man glares at him, completely disgusted that a mage with such wild stats is creeping through the shadows like a low-level rogue. Mentally, Will completely agrees. The dramatic entrance was definitely a bit much. Honestly, if he did not have the memories of his past timeline backing him up, he never would have possessed the sheer audacity to trespass on such highly classified territory. But let's be real, polite formalities are a massive waste of time right now. He had to crash the scene immediately, because he is literally the only person on Earth who can reverse this curse. Obviously, the seasoned headmaster knows that epic favors never come for free. Will shuts that down instantly. The clock is ticking, and saving her life completely overrules any petty backroom negotiations. Seeing his blazing determination, the old man finally caves. Will pulls up a chair right next to her bed, locking in to obliterate this sickness. But the suffocating, deadly aura radiating from the grandpa immediately grabs Will's focus. Piercing right through his soul, the chairman's menacing glare is sending a crystal-clear message: if this kid messes up even slightly, he is getting instantly obliterated. Swallowing his nerves, Will inhales sharply, centers his focus to avoid a fatal screw-up, and unleashes his signature healing aura. As the radiant energy flows from his palms, He quickly realizes his current mana reserves are massively nerfed compared to his past life's peak, but raw power does not matter right now. What counts is flawless, zero-mistake execution of the magical equations which, luckily, are hardwired right into his brain. After a tense few moments, the girl finally flutters her eyes open. And the very first thing she locks onto? The absolute dreamboat who just ripped her from the jaws of death. Her face instantly erupts in a massive blush, and she quickly buries her face into the pillows to hide her flustered panic. Over in the corner, Grandpa is completely frozen, his jaw practically on the floor, as he watches his beloved. Giving him a soft smile, she tells him she is back, and that she honestly has not felt this incredible in years. Hearing that, the tough old veteran absolutely loses it, weeping silent tears of pure joy. The crushing depression that had been haunting his every waking moment just completely vanishes, all thanks to our absolute legend of a main character. Fast forward a few minutes, and the tension drops as both guys take a seat in the ultra-luxurious living room. Bowing his head in deep respect, the immensely powerful chairman basically flashing a confident smirk. Will quickly reassures him that he won't be asking for half the kingdom. What he wants? It is incredibly simple, and completely within. Look, everybody knows the truth. When we're talking about healing magic, Will is entirely in a league of his own. The dude has literally maxed out his stats. He's hit the ceiling, and honestly, he's bored. That's exactly why he's craving a totally new build. His target? The prestigious Schwartz Academy. Naturally, the old man thinks he's losing his mind. Why would anyone toss away top-tier talent for zero reason? Diving headfirst into completely uncharted territory sounds straight up reckless. But the old guy gave his word, and he refuses to back out now. Gripping the boy's hand, he locks in the deal, swearing to hold up his end of the bargain. Meanwhile, deep inside the academy walls, a completely toxic instructor glares at our boy's file. He scoffs, thinking the chairman has completely lost the plot. Accepting a pure healer with absolutely zero attack stats into a hardcore combat school? Wild. Before long, opening day officially kicks off. Swarms of fresh faces pack the massive assembly hall. Up on the main stage, the chairman grabs the mic, absolutely glazed. Schwartz Academy isn't your average high school. It's an elite, live-in facility dedicated purely to explosive attack magic. Flexing a hardcore curriculum, the sprawling campus boasts countless combat arenas. Throw in some next-level research labs and a colossal library, and this place is basically a mage's paradise. Heavy-hitting alumni dominate the world outside these walls, guaranteeing the school massive funding and elite backing from the royal crown itself. Long story short, if you want to master the lethal art of destruction, there is absolutely nowhere else on Earth you'd rather be. But remember, our main character is just a squishy healer crashing an elite fighters club. This kind of stunt has literally never been pulled off before. Obviously, his journey is about to be absolute hell, but our guy doesn't care. He is totally locked in for the grind. He will endure anything just to unlock that heavy damage output. Sadly, reality hits way harder than a daydream. Fast forward to the very first practical lesson. Will is dripping with sweat, totally stressing out. His single objective? Blast a dummy with a basic fireball. He grits his teeth and sparks a flame, but the tiny flash instantly dies out, smoking into nothing. Strike 2, strike 3. He keeps failing. And making things 10 times worse? His instructor is absolute garbage. This dude actively weaponizes Will's low stats, using every chance to publicly humiliate him. He drops a brutal ultimatum. Will is completely banned from regular classes. Until he levels up, he is strictly banished to the outdoor dirt rings to figure it out alone. Cornering the jerk behind the main building, Will practically begs for a basic tutorial. Just a crumb of guidance. Without a walkthrough, he's totally hard stuck. But let's be real. This petty instructor has been plotting on our boy's downfall since day one. In his twisted mind, burning resources on a support class is a complete joke. Desperate, Will pleads for a library pass. He just wants to grind the theory books. But guess what? The arrogant clown laughs in his face. He brutally reminds Will of his place, claiming this elite facility doesn't stock picture books for pathetic healers. Spotting an easy target, some blonde punk seizes the moment. He launches a cheap, invisible, magical strike right at our boy's blind spot. The impact violently slams Will straight into the dirt. The poor dude never even saw it coming. Instead of backing off, the scumbag just smirks. To him, a vulnerable target rolling in the dust is literally an invitation to deal more damage. He flexes his high combat ranking, aggressively spitting that fragile little medics like Will need to pack their bags and drop out immediately. Honestly, watching a full-grown faculty member literally team up with a high school bully is absolutely wild. The duo ruthlessly clowns on him, treating him like actual garbage on the bottom of their shoes. Later that night, Will slumps on a lonely bench, completely drained. Every single attempt to spark an attack spell has crashed and burned spectacularly. He always knew the learning curve would be brutal. The gap between healing and destroying is massive, mainly because they run on think of mana as raw brain power. It's a wizard's ultimate weapon, triggered by complex mental coding. This energy directly obeys the user's vibe. Crank that energy up to cause massive explosions. And boom, you've got offensive magic. Medics, though, their aura is naturally chill and totally static. But that is exactly why he infiltrated Schwartz Academy. They are literally the top-tier guild for creating heavy hitters. They have to possess the secret code to unlocking aggressive, dynamic mana. Will is utterly convinced he can hack his own core. He just needs to figure out how to flip his static energy switch into pure, destructive power. The fatal flaw in his master plan? He's completely locked out of the classrooms because of that deeply insecure, power-tripping instructor. Still, our boy refuses to tap out. Deep down, he's holding out hope to bump into the one mysterious girl who saved him in his past life. Honestly, just crossing paths with her would instantly make all this relentless suffering 100% worth it. But running blindly at a brick wall isn't going to work. He desperately needs a new strategy. Out of nowhere, a super familiar voice cuts through the dark, calling him out for breaking curfew. Will snaps his head up, completely stunned. Standing right there, looking this girl was an absolute beast on the battlefield, who fought right by his side. Hands down, one of the most lethal, god-tier offensive mages he had ever crossed paths with. Watching her bite, the dust in that devastating war completely broke him. But by some massive stroke of luck, she is breathing and kicking in this regress timeline. But before our guy can even drop a single hello, this powerhouse instantly draws that iconic, overpowered blade, capable of slicing straight through reality itself. I mean, she is practically giving off female Gojo energy mixed with Sukuna's insane destructive vibes. So yeah, having her dead aim, plot twist, though she is actually prowling the campus, trying to track down some shady student who has been causing trouble. Sizing him up, she glares, wondering if Will is the delinquent in question. Sweating bullets, our boy frantically waves his hands, swearing up and down that he is totally innocent, because if she accidentally lets that blade rip, bro is going to need another one-way ticket from Truck Kun to restart his life all over again. Miraculously, she buys his story, letting him finally breathe. Catching his breath, he cautiously asks if she is actually the legendary Veronica. Instantly triggered, the woman snaps at him for disrespecting a faculty member with such casual street talk, leaving our boy totally flabbergasted and embarrassed. Sure, in his past life, he knew she had a few years on him, but she definitely was not old enough to be handing out detentions. As it turns out, she is a literal genius who speed ran her academics, skipping multiple grades to snag a cushy professor gig right off the bat. Honestly, making total sense when you consider her insanely busted, top-tier talent. And right then, it clicks. This is the exact golden... She is the walking cheat code who can finally teach him how to blast enemies with offensive magic. Fired up, Will practically begs to join her exclusive class, treating her like his ultimate saving grace. He eagerly grills her on how to secure a spot on her roster, but she brutally shuts him down in a heartbeat, dropping the bomb that she is not even teaching any courses right now. Being a totally fresh face on the faculty who just skipped all the traditional steps, she is completely clueless about how the academy system actually operates this semester. Right now, Veronica is just stuck playing the role of... The administration's big brain plan was to use her youthful vibe to bond with all the students who are basically in her age bracket. In theory, she should be their ultimate peer mentor. But instead, she is low-key annoyed, because literally nobody has the guts to come within. Students are dodging her office hours like the plague. Honestly though, our boy knows exactly why everyone is ghosting her. It is entirely because this absolute psycho brandishes a little... But in Will's eyes, this whole isolated genius situation is a massive win, giving him the perfect loophole to exploit her skills. Bro does not even need to stress about officially enrolling in any tedious lectures. He can just finesse the system and make her his own personal, private magic tutor. Smirking internally, he throws a heavy question her way, fully aware that she is literally paid to answer him. Cutting straight to the chase, our guy asks the million-dollar question. How on earth does a squishy healer go about mastering explosive, offensive spells? The second those words leave his mouth, Veronica's eyes narrow, immediately catching on that this dude is anything but a basic, run-of-the-mill non-player character. Scanning his freakishly unnatural mana pathways, it clicks for her this is that infamous, rule-breaking freshman who just crashed into Schwartz Academy. She flat out admits that in all her years of studying, she has never once seen a standard support class healer try to evolve into a damage-dealing tank. But here is the massive clutch about Schwartz Academy. They actually teach a secret technique to manifest something known as dynamic mana. It is a core energy type that our protagonist firmly believes will be the ultimate stepping stone to unlock his hidden damage potential. Hearing Veronica validate that this technique is real sends Will into maximum hype mode, totally convincing him that he has a legit fighting chance. Just one tiny, soul-crushing issue. This woman looks him dead in the eye and brutally states that even with this fancy trick, his delusional self still cannot cast a. This nasty reality check leaves our boy completely shook, especially when Veronica breaks down how his body is already ridiculously oversaturated with static healing mana. Basically, even if he grinds to generate that explosive dynamic energy from scratch, his body will instantly swallow it up and recycle it back into boring, static healing energy. And if he tries to force the process using some bootleg method, the clash between the two opposing energies will completely short-circuit his core, hard locking him out of using any. Yeah, things are looking insanely doomed for our guy right now. Bro literally uprooted his entire life to switch schools, only to get slapped with the harsh truth that a standard medic physically cannot deal damage. Will is seriously starting to regret that Truck-kun did not drop an overpowered instruction manual when he got yeeted back to the past. Still, he refuses to take the loss, fully prepared to become the absolute Einstein of this era just to hack the magic system and invent a brand. Tossing a quick thanks to the assistant professor, he turns to walk away until Veronica suddenly barks out, commanding him to freeze and hear her out. Picking up right where she left off, she drops a massive bombshell. While traditional healers absolutely cannot sling attack spells, there is exactly one bizarre loophole that could transform him into a. This whiplash completely fries his brain because our boy is struggling to comprehend how that logic even mathematically works. Instead of yapping, Veronica proves her point visually. She flashes her uniquely forged iron blade, a deadly tool built purely to slice through monsters, before abruptly pointing at a complete built specifically to park your glutes on. Basically, this zero IQ professor is just pointing out that the sky is blue and grass is green. But wait for the insane plot twist. She effortlessly hoists the heavy bench, breaking down how, if she used it to brutally smash someone's skull in, it instantly transforms into a lethal weapon. Hilariously enough, Will is standing there baffled, wondering how this undercover muscle mommy is casually deadlifting solid wood with those literal noodle arms. Regardless, Veronica's entire philosophy boils down to this. Just because an object has a designated label does not mean you cannot weaponize it however you see fit. To really hammer the lesson home, she uses her own bare hands, gently caressing his cheek and making our boy blush furiously. It is an absolute fantasy scenario for literally any guy. While dropping the mic on how her hand just served two completely contrasting purposes, she definitely left a massive welt on his face. Still, the ultimate lesson sinks in perfectly. Same tool, totally different application. Suddenly, a massive light bulb goes off in Will's brain. He seriously starts contemplating if he can weaponize his healing magic to actually deal damage. For his entire life, that crazy concept never even crossed his mind. The core reason the two rival magic factions constantly bash heads is strictly due to the fundamental properties of their respective mana pools. However, Veronica sees right through the noise. To her, this kid is built entirely different, proving his insane guts just by stepping foot inside a combat-focused academy. Even his raw magical aura practically screams that he is way more than just a typical backline support. That wild observation totally flew under Will's own radar, leaving him guessing if this hidden perk was a secret parting gift from the legendary Truck-kun. Pressing her cold steel blade directly against his throat, she commands him to wake the heck up and spark that violently aggressive fire buried deep inside his soul. If he can finally lock in, he will transform into an absolute menace, effortlessly crushing anybody foolish enough to block his path. Fast forward to the following morning, and our boy is completely zoning out. constantly replaying his mentor's intense lecture. She laid down so many brutal analogies to prove her thesis. What genuinely shocks him to the core is her total lack of toxic prejudice against standard support classes. Plus, the crazy fact that she basically freestyled a flawless comp. Will firmly suspects that this badass instructor is secretly abusing that exact same loophole for her own fighting style. Suddenly, his deep brainstorming session gets completely shattered when an arrogant staff member aggressively barks at him, mocking him as just a healer. Today's curriculum is genuinely hyped up, featuring an absolute gauntlet of intense one-on-one duels. And surprisingly, he is fully cleared to jump into the arena with. Naturally, whether he can actually cast a single damage spell or just get folded is entirely on him. Meanwhile, this absolute trash tier instructor has just dropped the official matchup brackets. Without missing a single beat, this rigged system forces our boy into a brutal showdown against Ulpus, that exact same insufferable. Honestly, our guy is dreading every single second of this upcoming clash, mostly because this arrogant punk practically owns the school, flexing his elite Noble Academy background and unlimited VIP. He is the ultimate spoiled trust fund baby. But setting the endless wealth aside, the dude is legitimately a terrifying threat on the battlefield. Ulpus is already celebrating his unearned W, ruthlessly trash-talking our protagonist and loudly mocking if he is going to go cry to his mommy after getting violently wiped out. Will is practically biting his tongue off, desperately fighting the urge to get totally rage-baited by this absolute clown, even possessing a mature mindset from his past life. This literal child is aggressively. On the bright side, Will desperately needs a live crash test dummy to experiment with Veronica's insane combat theory, immediately spiking his hype for this duel. He boldly grabs the smirking professor's attention, flat out refusing to take the easy way out and surrender. Instead, our underdog throws a massive curveball, openly admitting that his damage-dealing stats are literally zero, making a standard magical shootout incredibly boring. Jacking the stakes up to maximum overdrive, he looks them dead in the eye and swears on his life that he will permanently pack his bags and quit Schwartz. The corrupt professor is practically drooling at that massive gamble. But the ultimate catch is insane. If our boy somehow secures the victory, he instantly earns the right to attend top. It is a totally disrespectful wager, but Ulpus has such a massive ego that he just bursts into hysterical laughter, completely mocking the absolute delusion of a support main actually winning. Bro genuinely believes Will is trapped in a permanent state of megacope, stranded on Delulu Island with literally 0% chance of survival. Completely exhausted by the endless yapping, the instructor locks in the bet and barks at both challengers to step. With a sharp wave of his hand, the highly anticipated deathmatch officially begins, as Ulpus casually flexes his terrifying offensive aura. He instantly summons a terrifying swarm of glowing, razor-sharp blades hovering in midair. This is his ultimate signature move, Phantom Knife, Creation Magic. Basically, Bro is literally just a Walmart version of Gilgamesh, aggressively spamming tiny little pocket knives, launching the entire deadly barrage straight at Will's face. He loudly gloats that a pathetic healbot lacks the base, but our absolute Chad is just standing there chilling in a full-blown Buddha stance, looking completely ready to pop his very own domain expansion. The exact millisecond his hidden technique goes live, his agility absolutely skyrockets, allowing him to flawlessly weave through the lethal storm of blades like he is in the Matrix. He just unleashed a broken skill known as life manipulation, actively hijacking the biological essence of his own body to overclock his physical stats and max out his HP bar beyond mortal limit. But the crazy part? He is fully prepared to weaponize that exact same healing flow into a devastating physical strike. Watching this happen, Ulpus completely loses his mind, desperately. Yet our guy is straight up radiating main character energy without moving a muscle. He snatches that knockoff Gilgamesh blade right out of the air, then deflects the rest with pure Sharu Emiya drip. Those blades clatter to the ground, dealing absolutely zero damage. But Will is just warming up. Gripping a single borrowed dagger, he is ready to flat-out end this entire clash. The crowd is absolutely shook. Their brains literally glitch out trying to process a support class tossing out heavy-hitting strikes. The wild truth? He is literally weaponizing pure recovery magic to dish out severe damage. I didn't even drop a single attack spell. Will flexes. Cornered and coping hard, Ulpus starts yapping about how he was totally holding back this whole time. Plot twist, this dude can multiply his floating knives. Because obviously, spamming more of the same trash will totally save him. Roaring in pure rage, he unleashes a golden storm of blades right at our healer. But Will just casually bats away every single projectile like it is child's play. When the dust settles, the arena floor is littered with shattered metal. Yet, somehow, Ulpus still thinks he is the absolute boss here. Desperate, he inflates his tiny blade into a massive, oversized greatsword. And honestly, the angle on that thing is looking incredibly sus right now. Moving on, Will realizes dragging out this brawl is a massive headache, mainly because his opponent actually has some legit magical IQ. Dialing up the heat, the noble spins his colossal blade at insane speeds, essentially launching a magical nuke straight at our guy. Bro straight up bootlegged the Sukuna fire arrow technique, just for Will to completely face tank and parry that garbage too. Completely out of anime, moves to plagiarize. The noble screams in pure agony. Meanwhile, Will calculates that it is time to slowly crank up his own power level. The devastating missile is swatted away like a fly, leaving Ulpus completely gagged. In a flash, Will pulls a Goku instant transmission and materializes right behind him. Whispering a cold promise to patch him up later, our healer goes straight for the brutal finisher. Boom! The instructor suddenly crashes the party, slamming a massive boulder barricade right between them to stop the bloodbath. Calling the duel a wrap, the teacher orders them off the battlefield to make way for the next sparring duo. This catastrophic L completely shatters the arrogant noble's ego. Will, however, is just vibing. Thrilled he finally unlocked access to normal lectures, which makes the corrupt. With the brawl officially wrapped, he dips from the arena, replaying the intense skirmish in his head. He finally forged his very own custom combat spells, and they packed enough firepower to completely wipe the floor with a top-tier prodigy. Big shout out to Veronica for the elite coaching. Back at the ring, the humiliated brat gets scooped up by his biased professor. Trembling, the defeated noble begs the instructor to keep this devastating wipeout a secret from his terrifying dad. These two are straight-up generational haters who violently refuse to accept an L. Cutting to the next day, our boy settles into his actual classroom. Finally, in the right environment, he is ready to grind out his magical theory and level up. The shady professor struts in, shooting a filthy glare at Will before kicking off the lecture. Honestly, the curriculum has been absolute rookie stuff so far. Turns out, this single homeroom guy is basically running the entire academic gauntlet for them. The artifact crafting period totally catches Will's attention, giving him massive deja vu from his days grinding at the support academy. Today's mission? Forging tactical frost grenades. The teacher distributes raw components, expecting the squad to fuse and refine them on the spot. Glancing at the gear, our guy flashes back to his past life, realizing his crafting tree was strictly locked to health potions, never actual weaponry. But surviving this hardcore combat school means he has to build tools meant for pure destruction. Naturally, the fuel required for this is highly volatile dynamic energy. However, the crafting process is a completely different beast. The actual flavor of your aura barely even matters when building stuff. Thanks to that loophole, our boy is totally chilling, despite his massive reserves being locked into static energy. Inspecting his loot, he spots chunks of a frozen golem paired with some crushed-up cinder twigs. Sticking to the recipe, he blends the frosty shards together, but immediately triggers a highly unstable chemical reaction. Channeling raw physical buffs, Will yeets the ticking ice crystal across the room right as it violently bursts, blasting lethal frost spikes everywhere. Our dude is low-key amazed by the blast radius, but accidentally bombing the laboratory is considered ultimate disrespect to the lecture. The furious teacher unleashes a toxic rant, immediately threatening to nuke Will's academic points into oblivion. The back row bullies erupt into mocking laughter, with Ulpus grinning the loudest, basically confirming he is plotting against him with the faculty. Next up on the schedule is monster taming. Will gets paired with an adorable fire lizard while the snobby professor barks at the underdog students to pay extra attention. Honestly, our guy is sweating bullets, feeling totally weirded out being this up close and personal with a literal beast. Without warning, this bite-sized murder machine spews out a lethal flamethrower blast, forcing our healer to desperately parry the heat. Plot twist: that whole fiery death scenario was purely in his head. His weird flinching actually draws the teacher's aggro, who swiftly confiscates his makeshift cauldron. The vibes are massively off, and it finally clicks in Will's brain exactly what kind of trap he stepped into. Sure, the professor lets him sit in on lectures, but he is actively sabotaging him at every turn. If this psychological warfare keeps up, his grind halts completely, meaning he needs a counter-strat immediately. Lurking in the shadows once again is that mysterious classmate who totally sees through the faculty's toxic double standards. With the relentless harassment showing zero signs of stopping, Will realizes his absolute biggest threats aren't even his fellow peers anymore, not to mention the instructor deliberately throwing absurd, off-script questions just to watch him fail. His academic score absolutely tanked, and the bullying didn't stop at the classroom doors. He came back to find his dorm room trashed by absolute menaces. Trying to report the sabotage completely backfired, as the corrupt supervisor just doubled down, deadass revoking his dinner privileges for speaking up. Our guy is getting brutally targeted from every single angle. He faceplants into his bed, fully accepting that this entire academy is literally breathing down his neck. Every single time he inches forward, the system actively throws a mountain of insane roadblocks to drag him right back down. But Will knows his insane growth rate speaks for itself, absolutely refusing to let these pathetic bullies live rent-free in his head. The ultimate flex? He actually threw hands with one of his tormentors and walked away with a massive victory. That single win is the rock-solid proof he needs to evolve into the badass combat mage he's destined to be. Shaking off the toxicity, Will hypes himself up over finally securing his very own textbook. Now he can finally grind through his assignments like a normal student. But when sunrise hits and he steps into the lecture hall, he freezes. The entire room is a total ghost town. Normally, the professor would be breathing down their necks by now. Yet only a single girl is sitting nearby in the deafening silence. It totally reeks of a setup, like they intentionally gatekept the sudden scheduled change from specific targets. Fed up with the mind games, Will marches over to break the ice with the mysterious girl, making her visibly flinch as he steps into her personal space. Our boy just needs the tea on whether the timetable got secretly flipped overnight, and obviously, it is a targeted ambush. The malicious professor has a clear hit list, and since she is definitely on it, both of them are completely screwed. Figuring that two targeted outcasts should probably stick together, Will immediately picks up on her suffocating anxiety. Flashing a warm smile, he extends his hand, straight up offering to form an alliance in this toxic wasteland. Visibly shook, she immediately bows her head in deep respect, officially introducing herself as Erica Glenn, Will's very first ally in this cutthroat academy. She bluntly admits it makes total sense for him to be a total loner, given he was a late transfer and, worse, a mere healer. Erica casually drops the brutal reality that everyone relentlessly trashes healers for being uselessly weak, catching Will completely off guard. Even as a supposedly elite combat mage, she confesses she is definitely not swimming in friends either. Reading between the lines, Will instantly realizes that this venomous prejudice against support classes is literally hardwired into the DNA of Schwartz Academy. Sure, combat mages are the ones bleeding on the front lines, giving them a massive superiority complex over the healers hiding out in the safe zones. Back in his past life, Will literally carried the entire kingdom on his back. He commanded massive respect back then. But inside these hyper-aggressive academy walls, his past glory means absolutely nothing. If he does not ruthlessly push back, this institution's toxic hierarchy is going to eat him alive. Curious, Erica questions why a destined healer would ever willingly step foot into a hardcore combat school. Gathering his resolve, Will declares he is actively defying his so-called fate as a backline medic, determined to carve his path straight to the vanguard. His audacity leaves her utterly speechless, though Will hints that he is driven by some intense, deeply personal motives. Flipping the script to Erica's backstory, turns out she hails from a rural, aristocratic bloodline that entirely failed to produce a male heir. Her parents were completely devastated, convinced their entire legacy was doomed to fade into dust. Taking control of her destiny, she banked on becoming an overpowered battle mage to secure. Will totally respects the hustle, but Erica's tragic flaw is glaring. She possesses zero magical aptitude. Like, none. Add in zero social skills, and she is basically a walking target for the Academy's ruthless bullies. Honestly, she is just thrilled to claim our boy as a comrade, teasingly dubbing him a fellow flop who can make her feel better about her own garbage grades. Bro is catching strays even from his new bestie, though it is all just playful banter. Smiling, he confidently promises that her low expectations are about to be shattered. Skipping the lengthy explanations, Will grabs her attention and bolts toward the alternate lecture hall where the actual lesson is secretly popping off. They finally crash the hidden session, only for the horribly predictable professor to immediately brand them as truant. Will steps up to apologize for missing the totally unannounced schedule swap, but this massive narcissist flat out refuses to let it slide. Seeking pure humiliation, the professor fires off another impossibly complex question at him, This is looking incredibly grim. Panic strikes Erica. She knows our guy missed. Staring dead at the chalkboard, Will rapidly dissects the magical formula in his mind. While the ruthless teacher threatens to nuke his grade if he chokes, Professor Ulpus sadistically mocks him in front of everyone, fully convinced Will is about to fail spectacularly. But our boy is locked into absolute flow state. He snatches the chalk. Every single stroke grips the entire room's attention, even though Ulpus smugly assumes it is just a desperate bluff to save face. Reality check will totally crack the ultimate configuration, triggering the chalk-drawn magic circle to explode with blinding, undeniable light. He totally shattered everyone's expectations, leaving the professor literally has to swallow his pride and confess that the dude nailed the exact right answer. This absolute flex leaves Ulpus, and even their brains literally cannot process how the rookie managed to crack that impossible code. The guy actually solved the puzzle despite skipping literally every single lecture. The second that miserable session wraps up, Erica corners him, practically begging to know his secret to cracking that problem. Will plays it super cool, explaining that it was honestly a total breeze since he just grabbed the info straight from their assigned reading. Since he had already crushed the course manual, he perfectly anticipated what was coming. But what absolutely blows her mind is the fact that this absolute madman binge-read that massive tome in one single night. Will barely crack the cover before speedrunning the whole thing, hyping it up as an absolute masterclass on combat spells. From basic mechanics to high-tier combat applications, everything was broken down with such insane precision that he basically self-taught himself the entire curriculum. Normally, though, diving into that text without a solid baseline in sorcery is an absolute nightmare. Lucky for Will, our boy has always been a massive nerd for magic theory, letting him breeze right through the heavy jargon without breaking a sweat. He absorbed decades of combat magic theory in just 12 hours, flipping the pages like he was binging some fantasy light novel. While he acts super chill about it, it is infamous for being impossible to decipher without an elite mentor guiding you. She instantly feels incredibly stupid for ever labeling him a total flop. It hits her hard that she is the actual scrub here. Homegirl desperately hopes he does not leave her stranded in the loser bracket, but our guy smoothly promises to tutor her through any concept she struggles to grasp. They are ride-or-die classmates, after all. Erica immediately lights up, feeling super grateful for the carry. However, the harsh truth is that our protagonist is strictly focused on his own hidden agenda. He definitely did not enroll to play out some cheesy power of friendship trope. But as a lone wolf, Erica is a highly necessary asset right now. So, he instantly cashes in on a massive favor he needs from her. Next period on the schedule is standard combat magic. It is the one specific subject he consistently bombs, acting as a massive roadblock locking him out of the higher tier courses. Erica naturally assumes he will absolutely curb stomp the exam after wrecking Ulpus. But the brutal truth is way more complicated. Will is literally incapable of casting standard attack spells like the rest of the student body, but he has cooked up a 5 to 100 IQ galaxy brain. The entire master plan heavily relies on Erica playing her part perfectly to secure the dub. Cut to the next scene, and the cohort is hitting the combat arena once again. When we talk about combat sorcery, there are basically two distinct skill trees, standard and signature magic. Standard magic relies on rigid, mathematical blueprints, making it a super plug-and-play system for anyone willing to memorize the equations. Flipping the script, signature magic is basically hard-coded into a person's DNA. Exactly like that custom blade forging ability Ulpus flexed earlier. The school naturally provides dedicated training arcs for both categories, so the students can level up their arsenals. Since signature magic has no objective grading system, it acts as the ultimate cheat code for someone like our protagonist. It gives him a free pass to show up and completely dominate those specific sessions. Sadly, he hits a massive brick wall whenever standard combat spells enter the chat. His petty instructor is totally tracking this weakness. Milking the situation to humiliate the medic, the professor sarcastically claps for his textbook knowledge. He openly mocks how the kid will survive the live fire drill. Will is guaranteed to flunk out entirely. The teacher smugly announces that today's exam is identical to all his past miserable failures. The sole mission is blasting the dummy. He maliciously trashes Will again, branding it as a ridiculously elementary challenge. Bottom line, if he chokes on something this bare bones, he is looking at getting permanently expelled from the academy. Taking a mental step back, the professor replays the moment this kid violently weaponized his recovery skills during combat. He clearly remembers how those same medic spells massively buffed the boys, but it is a totally different ballgame today, solely because Will is biologically locked out of casting pure attack magic. The teacher is desperately praying the kid will just rage quit and drop the course. But our guy is firmly holding his ground, flashing a cocky smirk at the whole ordeal. The instructor's mind is absolutely vaporized when he suddenly watches Will's bare hand ignite into a roaring inferno. It defies all laws of physics and logic that this scrub could manifest a high-tier spell. But hold up, this is pure smoke and mirrors. What we are actually witnessing is a 2 to 100 IQ sleight of hand trick engineered by our protagonist. The entire massive brainplay completely relies on Erica secretly spawning a standard flame orb using her own mana pool. He essentially smuggled that borrowed heat directly inside a salamander's tail. From there, Will furiously spammed his passive recovery to feed the blaze, perfectly masking the raging fire right inside his own palm. Think of it like Gojo Satoru spamming his reverse curse technique to keep Limitless active. Bro is literally exploiting a glitch for infinite healing. Still, Erica watched in absolute disbelief, wondering who the heck she was even looking at. Little did she know, she was staring dead at humanity's absolute greatest healer. The absolute madman suddenly cut the healing magic, snapping his palm wide open to make it look exactly like he just manifested a blazing fireball out of thin air. Then came the easiest part. He just launched the flaming projectile straight down the range, obliterating the target with a flawless bullseye. The instructor bro was literally shaking in his boots. His own student just brutally humbled him for the second time. The optical illusion was so god-tier that this teacher fully believed Will just fired off raw offensive magic. That wild stunt bagged him an instant passing grade, drawing hyped applause from Erica while leaving the rest of the crowd totally brain-dead in confusion. But nobody was more triggered than Ulpus. The second class ended. He aggressively cornered the teacher demanding answers, but both of them were completely clueless. Because mathematically speaking, there was zero logical chance Will could have ever mastered general offensive spells. Ulpus's fragile ego was already shattered from his humiliating defeat, and seeing this random healer flex so hard pushed him over. The dude was ready to cry to his daddy and get the entire class permanently shut down. His insane tantrum even caught the corrupt teacher off guard. Turning his back, the stuck-up noble coldly ordered the instructor to do literally whatever it took to completely erase this healer from their roster. Now this scumbag teacher was backed into a tight corner, sweating bullets since bending academy rules meant risking severe exposure, and since he spent years kissing up to secure this prestigious academy gig, throwing his career away just was not an option. After calculating the odds, the desperate instructor decided rolling the dice to eliminate this annoying healer was totally worth it. A grown man holding a generational beef with a 15-year-old kid is wild, but he ultimately chose to handle this dirty work himself. Once the training grounds cleared out after school, the shady instructor deliberately summoned Will for a private meeting. The guy straight up started throwing threats, but our boy Will literally took them as compliments, completely blind to the massive red flags waving in his face. The teacher sinisterly claimed he just wanted to knock the kid's overflowing confidence down, using the weak excuse that Will had basically ghosted half the lectures when he first transferred into the academy, which was totally unhinged, considering this toxic teacher was the exact same guy who permanently banned him from attending those lessons in the first place. Will fired right back, calmly explaining that he already speedran the curriculum through hardcore self-study and buddying up with his friends, so it was all good. But this tyrannical boomer was not having it. He completely ignored logic, insisting this special one-on-one lesson was absolutely mandatory. Pulling the instructor card to rig the rules, he announced they would be throwing down in a brutal, full-contact mock battle. Warning bells started ringing in Will's head about fighting a fully fledged teacher out of nowhere, and honestly, the instructor knew exactly how twisted this was. So to make it look legit, he tossed the kid a massive handicap. Landing just one single strike would officially crown Will the winner of this pop quiz. Dangling that juicy bait, the manipulative teacher fully expected the boy to stop whining, lock in, and fight for his life. Obviously, this absolute clown never even factored in the possibility of taking an L. His ego was massively inflated. Meanwhile, our main guy stood there deep in thought, rapidly running the calculations and connecting the dots. The second Will accepted the sketchy terms, the teacher's nasty smirk widened, and the deathmatch kicked off without a second to waste. The corrupt mage instantly ripped a massive earth spell right out of the dirt, but thankfully, Will had already downloaded his opponent's attack patterns. Knowing this dirtbag practically spammed earth magic, Will smoothly glided right past the opening barrage. but the attack violently mutated, shooting out a jagged spike that forced Will into a desperate backflip. The kid was getting absolutely hammered by rapid-fire combos. The trash-talking teacher laughed at him for endlessly running away, but Will was too busy trying not to get completely crushed by this relentlessly spammable earth magic. Not to mention, the dude's area of effect range was absolutely cracked. This was a whole different beast compared to fighting Ulpus. But our boy, spotting an opening, Will blitzed straight through the danger zone, rapidly closing the gap, and dashed directly at the smirking teacher. The guy instantly channeled more mana, tearing two massive stone walls straight out of the bedrock. He violently slammed them together, attempting to crush the boy into a human pancake. It seriously looked like absolute game over. That is, until the villain looked up, completely horrified to see his student dropping straight from the sky, dagger drawn for his one and only kill shot. Will violently plunge the blade down, aiming right for the dome. But tragically, this coward had already spawned an ultra-thick layer of stone armor to tank the heavy damage. Will immediately backstepped, dodging a lethal counterattack to reset the distance. The slimy snake just mocked his student as totally pathetic before loudly flexing his so-called impenetrable ironclad. Even Will silently agreed that the edgelord naming sense was honestly cringe as fudge. Meanwhile, the arrogant teacher kept running his mouth, roasting Will for using some cheap, bootleg version of general offensive magic. He aggressively talked down, brutally berating the kid and trying to completely shatter his dreams of ever becoming a frontline attack mage. With absolute ice in his veins, our underdog reminds his arrogant teacher of one crucial fact. Mastering healing magic means mastering human anatomy on a microscopic level. Because of this, he realized a terrifying truth. People subconsciously nerf their own physical strength just to keep their muscles and bones from tearing themselves apart. The human frame is simply too fragile to handle 100% of its raw power, and crossing that red line obviously, the stuck-up instructor takes this as a massive slap to the face. How dare this bottom-tier healer try to school him like some grandmaster? But Will's logic is painfully simple. If you completely snap the brain's safety limiters, you can unleash absolute god-tier damage, assuming you do not mind turning your own limbs into literal jelly, and that is the ultimate cheat code of being an overpowered healer. Bro is about to pull a straight-up Izuku Midoriya. He gives zero cares if his own arms get utterly pulverized in the process. This borderline psychotic resolve completely paralyzes the instructor. Will hits the ultimate Chad stride right toward the teacher, who is still hard coping, fully convinced his corny earth armor is completely unbreakable. Deku winds up for a massive Texas smash. Oh wait, my bad. Wrong anime entirely. The teacher practically squeals in terror, as Will's bare fist completely obliterates his and Bro does not just stop at breaking the armor. He rearranges the dude's face so badly, he ends up looking way more cooked than Jake Paul stepping into the standing over him. Will coldly warns the bozo to stop gatekeeping his students' futures. Deep down, a warm wave of gratitude hits him as he flashes back to Veronica's elite mentor. She was the sole catalyst who helped him weaponize his basic healing magic into this insanely busted, overpowered strength. He realizes his true potential has not even begun to peak yet. But the second he zones out, this incredibly salty instructor pulls a dirty trick, blindsiding him with a massive, razor-sharp pillar of earth. Will completely styles on the attack with a flawless dodge. But dodging does not exactly cool off this loot. Our boy definitely was not expecting to get sucker punched like that, especially since he literally just cleared the exact win conditions of the exam. The teacher starts yapping absolute nonsense, desperately claiming that since no cameras or witnesses were around, nothing actually happened. Basically, in his twisted mind, a low-class healing mage never even laid a finger on him. His fragile ego simply cannot process taking a massive L from a supposedly trash-tier healer, so he instantly starts spamming high-level earth spells right at Will. At this point, Will is getting incredibly fed up with this dude's obnoxious Sato Kaiba screw the rules energy. Luckily, with his physical limiters completely turned off, he launches forward at supersonic speeds, effortlessly blitzing past the barrage of attacks. The instructor's brain straight up short-circuits trying to track Will's movements. As the kid closes the distance with another absolute nuke of a right hook ready to drop, there is zero chance that goofy earth armor casts fast enough to save his life. But right before the knuckles cave his skull in, the fist freezes, dead in its tracks. It literally feels like the flow of time itself just glitched out and paused. Then, in excruciatingly slow motion, Will's enduring this insanely disrespectful, slow-motion beatdown is psychologically way worse than the first punch. He is literally trapped in his own body, unable to run, unable to flinch. This entire sequence is absolute peak comedy, because this single, drawn-out punch basically eats up like 50 whole manga panels. Finally, Will drops the hammer, unleashing the kinetic energy and launching this dude backward, ragdolling him right into the dirt. Turns out, the whole time, our genius healer was secretly abusing another one of his insane magic hacks. He sarcastically welcomes the dizzy teacher back to the real world, casually dropping the bomb that everything he just experienced happened in less than a single second. But hey, Will actually has class. Unlike this terrible instructor, he decides to break down the mechanics. The moment his fist made contact, he secretly triggered a sensory-enhancing illusion. Normally, this magic is exclusively designed to cure hospital patients suffering from failing vision or hearing loss. But lately, our absolute madman of a protagonist has been weaponizing it on himself to drastically buff his own reaction speed and reflexes mid-fight. By casting it offensively on an enemy, he basically overclocks this terrifying loop makes a standard punch feel like straight-up psychological torture, stretching the physical pain out into an eternity. Brushing off his hands, Will flashes a menacingly sweet smile at the broken man, politely asking if he finally managed to score a passing grade. Before the arrogant teacher can even stutter out an answer, Will locks onto his shoulder with an absolute death grip. Looking dead into his eyes, Will coldly promises to beat every single ounce of anti-healer bias right out of the Academy's system. This supposedly squishy support character is literally radiating final boss energy right now, leaning in to whisper that his only goal is to peacefully vibe and enjoy his classes, which translates to, if this dude or his cronies ever try to mess with his peace again, they are going to catch absolute hell. Will wraps up his terrifying ultimatum with the friendliest smile imaginable, officially ending their little sparring session. Cut to that exact evening, the traumatized instructor is pacing his room, sweating actual bullets, as he questions what kind of literal monster he just provoked. His entire life, he fully believed that healing mages were just total pushovers, glorified walking health packs, meant to follow the orders of the frontline DPS players. But Will just shattered that stereotype completely. As fate would have it, he bumps straight into that blonde brat, who is absolutely dying to find out how the bloodbath of a training session went down. Ulpus lets out a smug little chuckle, fully expecting our guy got absolutely packed up. But reality hits him like a freight train, completely shutting him down. The instructor is absolutely fed up with this Nepo baby's endless yapping, straight up warning the arrogant noble to stay the hell away from Will. It is literally for his own survival. Their biggest, most fatal mistake was treating Will like some squishy, bottom. Shook by the harsh reality check, Ulpus instantly panics and hides behind his daddy's reputation, throwing around empty threats. But this time, the instructor could not care less. He practically dares the blonde brat to go cry to his father all he wants. Because let us be real, if Ulpus actually carried that kind of weight, he would have wiped our healer off the map ages. The Omen family does not just blindly bark on his command. But one thing is crystal clear. If they keep pushing this new kid, Will is going to bury their entire bloodline. Ulpus is left seething in absolute rage, his mind short-circuiting over how spectacularly his plan backfired. Fast forward a few days after that legendary beatdown, the academy bell rings, signaling the end of classes. Will is practically living his best life, completely unfazed, mainly because he can literally feel the blonde noble sweating bullets whenever he is nearby. No more cheap shots, no more snarky comments. Our boy finally has the peace and quiet he needs to actually grind out his studies. But honestly, he is still frustrated with his current power level. He is not just trying to survive high school. His ultimate mission is to rewrite the apocalyptic future and save humanity. To dodge that dark, twisted fate, he desperately needs to level up. Yeah, his healing magic acts as a crazy good buff for his physical, but right now, he is totally bottlenecked by just throwing basic, raw power punches. Sure, boosting his senses helps him see through illusions, but that is absolute child's play compared to the insane versatility of pure, offensive battle magic. Will realizes he needs to forge a completely unique combat style from scratch just to bridge the gap. He lays out this whole master plan to Assistant Professor Veronica, begging for her mentorship once again. His blueprint definitely needs some serious polishing, but Veronica stops him. She has something else to get off her chest first. He braces himself for a brutal critique, but surprisingly, she drops a massive compliment, praising him for utterly crushing expectations so far. Because of his insane performance, the faculty lounge cannot stop buzzing about the anomaly healer. A literal support class is going toe-to-toe with the absolute elites of the academy. That is no small feat. Of course, you still have those salty instructors glaring daggers at his massive glow-up. Typical hater energy. But the crazy part? Veronica has kept her. To be fair, she has barely even had a window to bring it up in the staff meetings. The other professors basically write her off anyway, treating her like an absolute outcast despite her elites. Hearing this, our boy lets out a huge sigh of relief. Staying off the radar means dodging unnecessary drama. Her golden advice practically carried him here. And the last thing he wants is to drag his mentor into the academy's toxic politics. But the professor just brushes it off with a smile, admitting that, truthfully, she is the one who owes him. Like she mentioned before, healers never actually have the guts to test out wild combat theories. And just like that, she unsheathes her blade. Weirdly enough, she really loves doing that, immediately challenging our boy to a one-on-one duel. Will is completely caught off guard by the sudden aggro, but you can see the absolute fire in her eyes. She is itching to test his actual limits firsthand. It is the fastest way to force a level up. But our boy is sweating buckets, totally unprepared for this. The badass swordswoman coldly reminds him that villains do not wait for a countdown, and absolutely blitzes forward. Boom! She materializes right in his face, bringing down a lethal slash that Will barely manages to parry by the skin of his teeth. His arms are practically trembling, struggling to keep his guard up against the sheer, crushing weight of her strikes, and she does not let up, drowning him in an endless hurricane of blades. Even after burning through all his physical buffs and pushing his reflexes to the max, he is getting complete. Here is the crazy reality about Veronica. Calling her fast is an insult. This woman is literal, breathing lightning. Her blade dances flawlessly from one deadly arc to the next. If this turns into a battle of stamina, Will is absolutely going to shatter first. Eating those bone-rattling impacts, Will realizes his win. He needs to tap into his ultimate, limit-breaking speed to completely blindside her. Channeling every ounce of mana into his legs, our boy explodes forward, matching her energy with his own roaring, thunderous momentum. His read was perfect. The seasoned professor is visibly stunned by the explosive burst of speed, but right as his weapon inches away from her face, her elite instincts kick in. She reacts at point-blank range, savagely slicing his weapon clean in half. Game over. Even going all out, Will simply cannot hold a candle to a top-tier warrior's mastery. Still, she genuinely did not expect him to pull such a cracked maneuver. She admits she actually had to rely on a magic sword just to block that final strike. Up until now, she just viewed him as a quirky healer with decent combat tricks. But this is a whole different beast. His current combat IQ easily places him among the Academy's top rankers. But for Will, it is nowhere near enough. And as always, his mentor completely backs his relentless. Driven to level up, Will realizes that basic buffs aren't the endgame. He openly admits he's gunning to completely shatter his body's absolute limits, but as their brutal clash just proved, raw stats alone aren't going to cut it. Dropping some serious wisdom, the professor compares it to a blade, pointing out that a sword isn't just for mindless swinging. Healing magic has to pack that same kind of hidden versatility. The crazy part? Will has already been racking his brain trying to unlock those exact same hacks, but he's hitting a massive brick wall. The stunning swordswoman breaks it down for him. His fatal flaw is a straight-up lack of real world. He's entirely missing that killer instinct needed to actually survive a brawl. In Veronica's eyes, textbook theory gets totally bodied by raw battlefield experience. Catching on, Will realizes he actually spotted a subtle, high-tier trick she pulled during their sparring match. Piecing the puzzle together, he asks if they should grind out some more hardcore sparring sessions together. Veronica vibes with the hustle, but she throws him a curveball. He needs to dive straight into a live-action monster. Hunting raid. Our boy is totally shook. Finally, he's getting thrown into the absolute meat grinder for a terrifying taste of life-or-death combat. Ironically, he's actually crossed paths with this exact type of trial before, back when Schwartz, Heilig, and Zilber. Each of these elite academies heavily flexes their own unique specs, from pure DPS and unbreakable defense to insane swordplay. The students are basically required to clear out high-stakes extermination quests. Back during his days at the Heilig Healing Academy, He was sidelined and completely missed out on the actual fieldwork. But now, he's got the golden ticket to slaughter some nightmare fuel beasts and stack up crucial XP before absolute chaos descends on their world. Will locks in, heavily hyped for his first official strike mission. Veronica watches his fire ignite, but quickly drops a reality check about the entry requirements. He's got to survive a brutal qualifier exam first. And word on the street is there's an absolute monster of a prodigy lurking among the freshmen. Without hesitating, Will sets his crosshairs on clutching the #1 spot, ready to completely wipe the floor with his classmates. When he asks how this gauntlet actually works, the answer is dead simple. It's a straight-up battle royale between the candidates. Around 100 hopefuls usually step into the ring to flex their power, leaving only the cream of the crop standing. Honestly, even our guy is getting pretty exhausted by this academy's toxic obsession with solving everything through violence. Back at Heilig, all it took was a handful of volunteers raising their hands, meaning literally anyone could jump into the fray. But Schwartz operates on a whole different level, gatekeeping their missions behind a ruthless elimination bracket. A wave of nostalgia hits Will as he flashes back to the chill vibes of the Healing Academy, low-key wondering what his old master. Veronica pivots the chat back to that insanely overpowered freshman. Clearly, securing that top rank is going to be a massive headache, prompting Will to ask if the assistant professor has actually crossed paths with this legend. Shockingly, she hasn't even caught a glimpse of the kid. Turns out, this phantom freshman practically ghosts the entire faculty, heavily flexing a massive ego like he's way out of their league. He hasn't even bothered showing up to her office hours once. Then again, she freely admits she's pretty terrifying to approach anyway. Pushing that aside, Veronica locks in a promise to personally coach Will for the upcoming bloodbath. This instantly boosts Will's morale to the moon, knowing damn well she's his absolute best ticket to leveling up. Fast forward to the highly anticipated exam day. Will confidently strides into the massive arena, barely processing how insanely fast the training arc flew by. He's practically radiating main character energy, fully locked and loaded after completing his hellish prep. While he's scoping out the competition, a super familiar voice calls him out. It's none other than Arnhelm, the top dog of the Magic Academy Alliance. The chairman is glowing with joy, dropping the massive update that his granddaughter has been making a flawless recovery ever since Will clutched that insane heel. The old man even drops a heavy apology, feeling insanely guilty for not keeping a closer eye on the kid, who literally snatched his granddaughter from the jaws of death. Will brushes it off like a champ, explaining that while the academy kicked his teeth in at first, he's totally adapted to the chaos now. Actually, he's so dialed in that he boldly declares he's stealing that coveted first-place crown today. It's the kind of raw ambition that leaves the chairman genuinely blown away. But crashing this wholesome moment is an absolute buzzkill of an instructor, who immediately starts trashing Will's massive goals as an absolute joke. This guy is fully convinced that our healer is heavily disrespecting the insane power scaling of his class. Oh, and spoiler alert, this dude, Bode, just happens to be the head honcho over. Here's the crazy plot twist. Though Will actually crossed paths with this exact hater in his past life, back when Bode was famously feared as the Violet Lightning. The guy was basically a walking nuke with god-tier hero stats during the Great War. But honestly, these two had major, unresolved beef back then, and surprise, surprise, history is repeating itself. The aggressively macho mage instantly tries to mentally break our healer by breathing down his neck. In a world crawling with god-tier combat prodigies, mere training is basically. This dude blatantly disrespects Will to his face, loudly broadcasting that our boy is absolutely cooked. Staying true to his healer roots, Will keeps his mouth shut, while the chairman steps in, suggesting they let their fists do the talking during the actual trial. The obnoxious instructor claims he is just schooling the rookie, hyping up his own top student, Sirius, as the guaranteed champion of this brutal test. This absolute unit literally looks like he got copy-pasted straight out of Genshin Impact. Enter Darius Blue Note, the heavily hyped phenomenon, carrying every. He is also the exact final boss our boy is fated to clash against for that #1 spot. The tension is suffocating, and the chairman is absolutely eating up this intense staring contest. Wasting zero time, the heavy hitters step into the massive arena, completely swallowed by the deafening roars of a bloodthirsty crowd, starving for an epic showdown. Will and Erica lock in their positions right near the front, standing in row number 2. Our healer is genuinely mind-blown to catch her entering this deadly brawl. Tragically, she is forced to throw down, or else the academy will completely nuke her living allowance. Even Ulpus is glaring daggers at our boy from the shadows, while the head honcho officially hypes up the survivors, praying the sickest mages take the crown. Phase 1 kicks off with a ruthless preliminary gauntlet. This absolute bloodbath is designed to wipe out the weak links, filtering out everyone except the absolute elite, meaning it is a massive free-for-all deathmatch. 100 ruthless students colliding all at once. The stadium is way too tiny for a match. The chairman casually drops his personal domain expansion, eating the entire roster into a completely different dimension. The panicked rookies cannot even process the insane landscape they just got dragged into. Meanwhile, the overpowered boomer casually chills at the edge of the cause. Will finds himself dumped into a dense, sprawling forest right behind the campus limits. With every single fighter locked in, the big boss broadcasts that they are all scattered across totally randomized spawn points. The ultimate objective? Team up if you are smart, and dodge the heavy hitters who can one-shot you. Spawn luck is everything right now. Meanwhile, Will is just standing there, mind blown by the headmaster's god-tier warp magic. The fact that this veteran warped 100 kids instantly is wild. And just like that, the chaotic survival exam officially drops. Priority number 1, our boy launches himself into the canopy, instantly triggering his stealth cloak magic. By completely erasing his aura, he vanishes into thin air. Playing the tack, glancing over his shoulder, he immediately spots a chaotic three-way standoff about to explode. One dude summons a hulking rock beast that honestly looks like a legendary Pokemon straight out of the Pokedex. Facing him is a girl wielding a ridiculously massive magical hammer, but they are both so locked in that they totally ghost the third player in the shadows. Boom. A third mage drops an icy nuke, freezing them solid. Will is genuinely hyped, witnessing the insane arsenals these offensive fighters are packing. Snagging first place is cool, but he realizes there is a goldmine of techniques to steal here. He memorizes that sick combo, ready to remix it into his own combat style. The dust settles, and the rock monster guy stands victorious. He starts flexing, hyping himself up over his massive dub, but out of nowhere, our phantom protagonist slides in with the dirtiest stealth takedown. Will violently claps his hand over the dude's skull. He instantly triggers consciousness blockade, shutting the guy's brain off like a light switch. Imagine it as a bite-sized version of Satoru Gojo's Infinite Void. By directly hijacking the enemy's life force, Will forces an instant blackout. However, he absolutely needs a death grip for it to trigger. If he slips even a millimeter, the jutsu fails. He directly yoinked this savage trick from Veronica during their brutal sparring days. Caught daydreaming, Will violently snaps back to reality, barely dodging a nasty barrage of flying blades. He instantly recognizes that same annoying pest from earlier. Only this time, the coward brought his whole squad to jump him. Ulpus acts like he is just surviving the test like everyone else, but he is clearly banking on a filthy 3-on-1 rat tactic. The stalker pops his blade-forging spell, while his wingman aggressively drenches the steel in lethal venom. To make matters worse, the third goon spams shadow clones, multiplying the toxic flying daggers into an endless swarm. With that lethal venom dripping off the steel, one tiny scratch equals game over. Tanking these hits is literally suicide. Dozens of glowing knives rocket straight at Will's throat. As the storm of steel closes in, he casually debates if his healing magic could just tank the poison. Dodging this massive swarm of flying blades is a total nightmare. Even with his physical buffs turned all the way up, pushed to the brink, he whips out a brand new trick. Out of nowhere, a massive barricade slams into the earth, shielding Will from the deadly downpour. Ulpus watches in absolute disbelief. That exact same rock golem from earlier, it is now taking orders from a completely different boss. Here is the insane loophole with healing magic. You can actually weaponize it on other living. Powered purely by the caster's blood, this hulking stone beast can stomp around independently, even if its attack patterns are incredibly basic. By casting pseudo-life imbuement, our healer puppets the monster like a toy. Without hesitation, the behemoth violently bulldozes straight into that scrawny trio. First, our Rocky unit absolutely obliterates one dude right in the chest. Then, it literally crushes the second guy beneath its sheer weight, guaranteeing him a lifetime of severe spinal trauma. Seeing his lackeys get completely wiped, Ulpus starts freaking out. He is cooked, especially since our boy speed blitzes him faster than a prime Hokage. Will violently snatches his face and instantly forces him into dreamland, wrapping up the brawl. Fading back into the shadows, he lets his stone minions spearhead the assault. Because his physical buffs severely restrict his melee capabilities, Deploying a monstrous proxy perfectly covers up his fatal flaw. Plus, it lets him comfortably scout the entire war zone from the backlines. It looks like a catastrophic hurricane just ripped through the woods. Nope. This twisting vortex of pure wind is basically a supercharged energy beam, and our protagonist survives getting completely vaporized by the absolute skin of his teeth. That monstrous blast literally carves a trench into the planet, instantly nuking the golem. Wiping through the clearing dust, Will spots a lone figure standing tall. It is none other than Sirius, the Academy's ultimate prodigy. No cap, this dude radiates way more main character energy than our actual hero. Just one look, and you instantly know his skill set is straight up horrifying. Will genuinely considers unleashing his trump card to clash with him, but the exam abruptly hits its time limit. The headmaster publicly applauds every single participant for surviving the brutal preliminary gauntlet. However, only 4 elite finalists are advancing to the next stage. The actual grand finale goes down inside the main coliseum. Until then, the chairman strongly suggests they heal up while he fires up a massive teleportation spell. As the shimmering portal opens, the hyper-intense Sirius locks a bone-chilling, deathly stare directly onto our unbothered hero. Will literally has 24 hours to cook up a winning strategy against this absolute monster. In a flash of light, both combatants vanish. Chilling back at his dorm, our academic weapon is furiously grinding through assignments while brainstorming a flawless tactical blueprint for the finals. Meanwhile, lurking right outside his door, Ulpus and his pathetic squad of bullies have shown up to crash the party yet again. They are fuming with absolute rage, having swallowed 50 humiliating defeats every single time they try stepping to our medic. But Ulpus is a totally arrogant crybaby. Obsessed with his elite pedigree, he is desperate to defend the Oman family crest from getting tarnished by some bottom-tier support class. The absolute biggest dread keeping him awake at night? His terrifying old man catching wind. His lackeys, however, are totally checked out. Realizing the danger, they completely ghost him, leaving the spoiled. Left entirely alone, Ulpus spirals into a full-blown meltdown, viciously vowing to permanently erase the healer without even needing a drop of mana. Completely oblivious, our guy is just vibing in his sanctuary. Out of nowhere, an unexpected knocking violently shatters the midnight silence. As he approaches the handle, a massive red flag triggers in his brain. Shocker. It is the insufferable Ulpus, waiting on the other side. The blonde tries putting on this super fake, overly polite, aristocratic facade. Will instantly sees right through the cringeworthy theatrical performance. Turns out, the golden boy just wants to chat. And by chat, I mean aggressively ranting about his deep-rooted, blinding disgust for anyone. He straight up confesses to pulling every single dirty trick in the book just to get Will permanently expelled from the prestigious campus. Naturally, our genius protagonist easily countered every single trap, humiliating him flawlessly. However, this time, Ulpus drops a deeply personal ultimatum. That phony nice guy mask instantly shatters as he aggressively commands the freshman to pack his bags and quit. So much for winning an Oscar. Honestly, Will kind of respects his sheer, unfiltered dedication to being an absolute hater. The dude literally refuses to touch grass. Pumping up his own ego, Ulpus brags about his flawless blue blood status, stating that low-tier medics have no right breathing the same air as him. He angrily reveals that his own older brother was born a pathetic healer. The elites ruthlessly mocked him, and the guy just stood there, smiling like a total coward. Attack mages rule like gods, while medics are treated like absolute trash. That is the toxic, suffocating brainwashing injected into these high-class families from birth. Ulpus tries to aggressively manipulate Will into dropping out, using his best attempt at psychological warfare. But Will is not about to just roll over and hand over his future. He flat out denies the demand, which the twisted aristocrat fully anticipated. Dripping with malice, he flexes that his shadowy underworld connections and loyal spies have completely doxed Will's entire family. The rich kid dug up a highly sensitive secret. Will has a younger sister, and they share an incredibly protective, deeply loving sibling bond. With one snap of his fingers, his assassins could effortlessly erase her from existence. Suddenly, the tension in the room brutally skyrockets. Will's chill, unbothered attitude completely vanishes. He violently lunges directly for the brat's throat, ruthlessly slamming him straight into the floorboards before securing a lethal chokehold from behind. Twisting the rich kid's arm right to the snapping point, Will drops a cold reminder. His choice is already locked in. Ulpus squeals like a kicked puppy, but the bone violently snaps anyway, reducing the stuck-up snob to a sobbing wreck. Clutching his limp limb, the brat still barks out empty threats, swearing the academy will drag Will through the mud for this assault. But here is the ultimate plot twist. Homie totally forgot our boy is a top-tier healer, popping that busted bone right back into place, which just means he gets to shatter it all over again. A sickening crunch echoes out a second time, plunging Ulpus back into absolute screaming agony. A flash of healing magic, and the twisted game loops. The noble begs for his life, only for his arm to get brutally dismantled once more. The agonizing cycle of snapping and mending drags on, while Will flashes a psychotic smile, casually whispering that he never backs down. Coming after his little sister was a fatal mistake this clown should never have made. Snap, crackle, and pop. The ruthless barrage of bone-crushing horror continues until the rich boy's ego is the terrifying realization finally hits him. This dude is not a medic. He is straight up the devil in disguise, catching the exact same brutal reality check as their instructor. The noble learns the hard way that Will is completely untouchable. Later that evening, Will tosses the traumatized kid back home with a cheerful wave. Zero guilt, zero stress, our guy practically sleeps like a baby. Fast forward to the next morning, and the main bracket kicks off. The stadium is totally packed, with the crowd buzzing for the upcoming bloodbath. The Elite Four who survived the opening gauntlet are finally squaring up for the semifinals. Stepping into the ring is none other than Erica, a competitor who honestly rumor has it, she literally just locked herself inside a blazing inferno, scaring off anyone. To keep it a buck, Homegirl just stood completely still and secured an easy victory by doing absolutely nothing. But Will senses a massive red flag. There is definitely a hidden catch here, especially when she softly begs him to hold back. Our boy absolutely refuses to simp, locking in for a total beatdown. Catching his vibe, Erica boldly claims she is about to steal his rank by burying him alive. The bell rings, and the ultimate clash begins. She instantly opens fire, hurling a scorching blast of plasma right at his face. Will tanks the inferno head first, brushing it off like it is nothing. It looks like basic tier magic, and his insane healing factor instantly erases the burn marks. Writing her off as weak was a massive rookie mistake, because he quickly spots a lethal flaw. The flames clinging to his clothes are not just lingering sparks, they are a ticking time bomb. Erica ruthlessly spams her blazing artillery, raining down fireballs. The terrifying part? These flames literally refuse to burn out. Bro, she basically stole Itachi's entire flow and unlocked Amaterasu. Her sheer damage output might be weak, but the infinite burn time is absolutely busted. Even with his hyper-regeneration dialed to the max, stacking infinite burn damage will eventually melt him down. The math adds up perfectly. This is the exact same eternal fire she let him borrow to completely cheese the preliminary magic test. It completely explains her flawless victory round. Nobody could breach her fiery defense because stepping into it meant catching permanent heat. Because her fire straight up defies the laws of physics, Erica's immortal flames perfectly match her unrelenting stubbornness. The crowd instantly hypes her up as she flexes this hidden, overpowered ability. Let us be real though, the stands are only cheering for her because they desperately want to see Will soaking in the hype. A giant wave of overconfidence heavily clouds her judgment. The delusional thought kicks in. She might actually sweep this whole tournament and flat out destroy a monster like Will. But Will is already cooking up a lethal counter. Overclocking his passive healing, he violently crushes the eternal embers on his skin. She launches another fiery barrage. Fully prepped, Will charges forward, completely unfazed by her immortal flames. Instead of dodging, he purposely catches the fire, point blank absorbing the heat to turbocharge his own physical strikes. Absolute peak battle IQ right here. The ultimate healer just weaponized her magic to create flaming brass knuckles. Just milliseconds before catching a devastating fiery right hook, Erica throws her hands in the air and screams that she quits. Dodging a trip to the ICU, she walks away without a scratch, while the ref crowns Will the official champion. Sadly, this easy sweep barely nudges his overall grade. The second the dust settles, the two-faced audience completely turns on Erica, violently booing her and chanting that she is a massive fraud. Being naturally built for the backlines, the poor girl instantly shatters under the crushing pressure of the stadium's hatred. Stepping up like an absolute Chad, Will gently pulls her to her feet and hypes up her crazy fighting spirit. He even patches up her minor burns, instantly making her blush. But the wholesome vibes are brutally slaughtered when Professor Bode storms into the arena, screaming for everyone to shut up. Jamming a finger straight at Will's chest, the arrogant boomer calls him a total parasite who does not belong there. He absolutely loses his mind over a combat mage, surrendering to a bottom-tier medic. The intense verbal abuse sends a terrified Erica running while Will stands there silently judging this teacher's unhinged meltdown. Flexing his authority, the supervisor flaunts his rank. In his twisted mind, that is supposed to be a pep talk. But right before storming off, he drops a heavy reality check on our boy. Only one single champion will survive this tournament. Right on cue, that exact rival steps straight up to the healer. Enter Sirius. Their vibe is instantly icy, with Sirius refusing to even lock eyes while he speaks. This guy worships pure power and entirely backs Instructor Bode's brutal worldview. Surprisingly, our healer just shrugs it off. But the prodigy drops an unexpected confession before walking away. He actually respects our boy, admitting the healer is a legit powerhouse. Even so, Sirius is dead set on validating his own toxic mindset by completely crushing him in the arena. Let us take a quick look at this prodigy's insane stats. Will suddenly remembers catching whispers of that exact name back in his past life, a monster wielding god-tier offensive magic. We are talking about hurricane-level winds, so devastating that anyone foolish enough to block his path gets instantly shredded to dust. The ultimate showdown between Sirius and Will is officially kicking off. Reading the room, our boy instantly realizes the harsh truth. He has to completely dismantle this prodigy right here and now if he ever wants the Academy to respect him, so taking the gold is his only option. The grand finale erupts as Sirius instantly detonates a colossal, earth-shattering tornado right from his starting spot. The massive area of effect swallows the arena, forcing Will to desperately scramble out of the danger zone. Firing back with limit-breaking agility, Will launches himself forward, but before he can even close the gap, Sirius detonates a relentless blast of hurricane force, winds violently pushing him back to square one. This spells massive trouble for our healer. He absolutely needs to get into point-blank range to land any lethal hits. These two absolute forces of nature lock horns in a brutal stalemate. As they stare, without hesitating, he throws a hand up and blasts an aggressive shockwave of compressed air straight at his rival. Our boy instantly panics, realizing that opening tornado was just a warm-up compared to this catastrophic gale ripping up the entire battlefield. Fighting just to keep his boots planted on the dirt, Will decides it is finally time to unleash his secret weapon. Slamming his palm against the earth, he literally forces a gigantic, towering tree to sprout right out of nowhere. Up in the bleachers, Erica watches with her jaw on the floor, totally blown away by this wild application of healing magic, especially since he just got buffed. Flashback to when our boy first debuted this trick to Professor Veronica. He explained how he pumped raw life energy directly into a tiny sapling. After reading up on offensive magic that controls nature, he figured he would experiment and try copying the exact same vibe. By unlocking this massive flex, he completely intended to level up his battle strategies. But almost instantly, his knees buckle under him, leaving Professor Veronica to frantically catch him before he eats dirt. He is completely shell-shocked by the massive mana drain, realizing the textbook entirely failed to mention what a terrifying toll this heavy-duty spell takes. Veronica breaks down the harsh reality for him. Wrecking things is universally way easier than creating life, because true healing burns through an astronomical amount of mana compared to standard destructive spells, and trying to copy an attack move by twisting healing magic. That is hands down the most reckless, inefficient way to bleed out your mana pool. Fully aware of the brutal drawbacks, he vows to keep this trump card locked away until the absolute perfect clutch moment. Snapping back to reality, our guy violently drops this exact skill into the current arena. Knowing his basic offensive magic is straight garbage, he bets everything on this high-risk play. But the second the massive trunk stops growing, Sirius effortlessly slices it cleanly in half using a razor-sharp blade of wind. That totally catches our guy off guard, because up until now, Sirius's whole gimmick was conjuring massive enemy-swallowing tornadoes and area-clearing storms. Now it clicks. Those localized wind blades are specifically designed to dice up solid obstacles, watching the arena revolve around him. Will finally gets why Sirius is hyped up as the absolute top-tier prodigy. But our guy didn't grind this magic just to play defense, so he launches himself straight at Sirius. Instantly, the rival summons a raging tornado around his body, trash-talking Will, and claiming he is practically untouchable. And honestly, he wasn't capping. The second our boy slams into the vortex, he gets swatted away like a fly, leaving Sirius smirking. But that smirk vanishes when a sharp pain hits. Sirius glances at his shoulder, completely stunned, to see a jagged wooden spike impaling his flesh. Looking absolutely bewildered, he demands to know what just happened. Will just drops a confident grin and breaks down his massive brain play. He figured out that Sirius had zero defenses guarding the dirt beneath his feet, so he triggered his subterranean vines. Those roots violently snaked through the earth and shot upward, scoring that vicious shoulder strike. Our main character then questions if Sirius is stressing over Professor Bode, especially since their vibes are literally polar opposites. Clutching his bleeding wound, Sirius lets out a painful groan. He grunts out that the professor only mentors him because of his raw power. But Will isn't letting it go, pressing him for more answers. Since Will knows about his elite bloodline, Sirius finally drops the heavy lore. In his toxic family, magical dominance is literally the only thing that matters. The absolute strongest fighter claims the throne. Age, gender. They don't mean a single thing in that cutthroat household. This insane rule turned his own relatives into bloodthirsty rivals, and even his own dad flat out refused to train him. So for Sirius, obeying this brutal professor was his only shot at leveling up and securing real power. Fueled by pure adrenaline, he channels a massive surge of mana, sending shockwaves through the entire audience. Even Will is totally caught off guard as that pure magic violently shapes into a towering dragon. Sirius locks eyes with him, roaring that this ends right here. The massive beast locks onto our boy, giving him a terrifying reality check. This isn't just a sparring match anymore. Back in the day, Will always assumed that offensive mages had life on easy mode, fueling his drive to grind like crazy. But he just realized he had it totally twisted. It suddenly clicks in his head. Being overpowered isn't just about natural talent. Heavy burdens like toxic bloodlines and traumatic pasts shape a warrior. Absorbing all this, Will stares Sirius down and vows to utterly crush him in this duel. Sirius is totally stunned by the bold flex. Without missing a beat, Will slams his palm into the dirt, activating his ultimate seed. He unleashes the legendary Yggdrasil. The colossal tree explodes from the ground, draining insanely high amounts of mana compared to his basic flora. But the major perk, it literally never stops expanding as long as Will keeps feeding it energy. Desperate Sirius unleashes a razor-sharp gale storm, brutally slicing the massive trunk in half and launching the debris sky-high. But as Sirius glances upward, he realizes the severed chunk has already mutated into a brand new gargantuan tree, and it is plummeting straight toward his skull. Meanwhile, Will calculates that, since Sirius is burning all his mana to keep that wind dragon alive, he literally has zero time left to cast a shield. That mega brain read pays off perfectly. The colossal timber violently crushes Sirius into the dirt. As the dust clears, he opens his eyes to find Will standing over him, a cold blade leveled right at his throat. Swallowing his pride, Sirius accepts his crushing defeat, and Will is officially crowned the victor. The stadium absolutely erupts. The crowd loses their minds, completely shook that the untouchable prodigy actually caught. Spectators wildly hype up our boy's insane combat IQ. Moving past the rivalry, Will casually extends a hand to pull his battered rival out of the crater, giving him major props for a crazy fight. But Sirius just sounds totally broken. Our boy tries to gas him up, insisting it was a legendary clash. But the vibe instantly dies when Professor Bode storms into the arena, radiating pure disgust. Flexing his terrifying physical strength, the madman effortlessly kicks the gigantic tree off Sirius and roughly hauls him up by his waist. He drags him away, absolutely seething over the humiliating loss. He barks that they are restarting his hellish training from level 1. The entire Colosseum drops into dead silence. Feeling the intense tension, the unhinged professor snaps his neck toward the bleachers, screaming that this brutal standard applies to every single student. Spitting mad, he yells that it is a flat-out disgrace for a literal support class healer to snatch the crown. Will notices this grown adult is throwing a massive tantrum. Stepping up, he fiercely defends his rival, stating that Sirius's raw output was incredibly lethal. He fires back that taking one loss does not make someone weak. But before our boy can drop another fact, the raging teacher aggressively snaps at him to shut his mouth. Stomping straight toward our protagonist, Bode savagely mocks him for daring to play the hero for a loser. He carelessly tosses Sirius onto the ground like garbage and violently insults Will's intelligence. He lectures him with venom, claiming that in a real match, overwhelming firepower is the single key to survival. Completely unhinged, he roars that anyone who loses a battle is nothing more than pathetic, disposable trash. Will is deeply disgusted by this so-called mentor trashing his own student. He claps back hard, declaring that being a healer doesn't give this toxic man a free pass to disrespect people. Bode's eyes practically glow with malicious rage. Trying to mentally shatter our boy, he snarls that Will is destined to be tossed out with the rest of the worthless trash very soon. Since society treats healers like absolute garbage, the professor ruthlessly mocks him, pointing out that our boy's mana pool is practically running on empty. This completely catches our guy off guard. Bode then doubles down, spitting venom as he calls weaklings straight-up parasites who only drag top-tier fighters to an early grave. Hearing himself called deadweight violently yanks our boy back to a dark memory, a time when Bode relentlessly tormented him for lacking pure combat power. But even back then, our protagonist refused to just roll over and take it. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he desperately argued that magic support classes are absolutely crucial, begging the professor to see that the world literally needs healers to survive. Without them, humanity is totally doomed. Hearing this, Bode releases his grip, his mind flashing back to his own tragic past, remembering the brutal day his star disciple held the bloody front lines. He sacrificed himself just to buy a few precious seconds for the rear guard to fall back. But it was all for nothing. That student was mercilessly slaughtered by low-level grunts at the extraction point, bleeding out with zero backup in sight. Bode was forced to watch the horror unfold, completely paralyzed by his inability to cast a single healing spell. Gripping his fists until his knuckles turned white, he screams that Sirius never should have died, protecting worthless trash. Honestly, from a pure survival perspective, the professor's twisted logic kind of makes sense. If you lack the power to protect yourself, you are going to catch a body, period. Everyone has to grind insanely hard just to stay breathing. But a terrifying future is creeping closer, a day when these chaotic beasts will mutate into something way more savage. When hell finally breaks loose, the elite fighters won't be able to babysit anyone. That is exactly why even the talentless underdogs need to learn how to throw down. Snapping back to reality, our guy looks the professor dead in the eye and demands a one-on-one duel, desperate to finally force some respect out of him. Bode practically chokes on a laugh and accepts on the spot, overly cocky, that a pathetic healer stands zero chance against his immense power. The arena official totally freaks out, asking if the professor has lost his mind. But Bode arrogantly flexes his authority, twisting the tournament rules just to get his way. Left with absolutely no choice, the official drags an injured Sirius off the stage. The speakers boom, announcing a highly irregular deathmatch, Will versus Bode. Seconds later, the absolute chaos kicks off. Bode cruelly cracks his knuckles, loudly flexing that he is about to expose our boy as a total fraud, especially since his mana tank is running on fumes. Will is sweating bullets. He is staring down the most terrifying boss-level threat he has seen in ages, forcing his brain into overdrive to craft a flawless survival strategy. Because this is not just a friendly sparring match, this is a fight for survival. Before Will can even flinch, Bode trash talks his pathetic reaction time, and boom, he drops a massive strike. The blinding crackle of his magic violently illuminates the entire arena as the professor smugly begins lecturing Will about the 3 fatal rules of combat. Suffocating magical pressure floods the battlefield as he lists his guaranteed win conditions. Rule 1, overwhelming range to pin down the target. Rule 2, blinding velocity. Speed so insane it permanently blitzes the enemy's reflexes. And Rule 3, apocalyptic attack power designed to one-shot anybody breathing. As Bode ramps up his villainous monologue, he sadistically jokes that his opponent is probably too dead to even hear the lesson. But out of the smoke, our guy violently pushes himself off the dirt, dripping blood, and savagely asks if that was supposed to be the one-shot kill. Our boy is still on his feet. He knew going in that the professor packed insane lightning spells, so he had to engineer a wild way to survive the high-voltage fry. He absolutely had to prevent the shockwaves from frying his internal organs. He knew his basic healing specs would be completely useless if his brain or heart got scorched, since regeneration just is not fast enough for fatal damage. To counter this, he literally hacked his own body by forging a raw blood circuit. By jamming a steel blade straight through his own hand, he created a perfect lightning rod. Now, whenever the raw voltage strikes the metal, the deadly current rips down his arm, shoots through his legs, and safely grounds itself into the arena floor, brutally nerfing the professor's ultimate damage. Still, tanking raw lightning is agonizingly painful. But now it is finally time for our boy to pop off and launch a massive counteroffensive. Bode just laughs it off, claiming he actually feels sorry for this kid who barely survived the initial blast. Ignoring the hate, Will channels magic to physically buff his own muscles. But mid-cast, a horrifying realization hits him like a truck. His limbs are completely dead weight. Bode wickedly reveals that his signature violet lightning permanently stuns its prey, locking them in absolute paralysis. Will's eyes widen as he realizes he is actually cooked. The arrogant professor simply raises his hand, casually charging up yet another lethal voltage strike aimed right at his frozen target. Bode wants to mercilessly dump the rest of his mana pool, treating our guy like a literal crash test dummy just to see how much torture he can endure. A blinding shockwave blasts through the stadium, making the crowd scream in pure terror. Our boy fiercely grits his teeth and takes the hit, forced to admit the professor's magic is god tier. An absolutely flawless elemental power that perfectly backs up his disgusting ego, but folding is simply not in our protagonist's DNA. He violently commits to securing this win, funneling every single drop of his remaining life force into pure magical manipulation. He violently slams his bloody palm into the dirt, instantly sprouting a massive mythical water treasure tree from the earth. This legendary plant acts like a super sponge, sucking up insane amounts of groundwater. If deployed as a living meat shield, it can completely diffuse the lethal high-voltage strikes. But sadly, the universe drops a massive plot twist. Bode brutally slices the massive trunk completely in half, with a focused lightning blade, leaving the entire grandstand gasping in absolute horror. Our boy freezes in pure shock as the professor casually strolls toward his broken body, 100% certain that this pathetic healer is completely out of ammo. But just as Bode smirks at the chopped-down timber, aggressive magical mushrooms suddenly explode from the dead wood, instantly wiping that cocky grin right off the professor's face. A heavy wave of relief finally washes over our boy. His wild strat actually paid off. See, when lightning nukes a forest into pure ash, mushrooms sprout up like crazy. It's the ultimate hack, a perfect spawn point with zero haters around. Fungi are the first to pop up, but here's the kicker. They pack a nasty, bone-locking paralysis effect. And Bode is feeling that exact stun lock right now. Panic flashes across the teacher's face. Will instantly spots the opening, realizing that annoying gap keeping them apart is completely wiped out. He channels everything into his fist and launches a brutal right hook straight at Bode's dome. But Bode casually sidesteps the haymaker and delivers a gut-wrenching counterblow, flexing that he's actually a beast at close-quarters combat too. He drops the mic, revealing his unique magic lets him completely hijack electrical currents. He smirks, claiming that by overcharging his own nervous system with raw lightning to hype-speed his reflexes, that little paralyzing mushroom stunt is absolute child's play. Collapsed on the dirt, gasping and clutching his bruised ribs, Will's mind reels. He refuses to swallow this massive L. Towering over him, Bode supercharges his fist, totally hyping himself up as the undisputed champ. But right before he drops the hammer, a cold presence interrupts. Bode snaps his head back. It's Professor Veronica Blade, fully unsheathed. He tries to wave her off, telling the rookie teacher to stay out of grown folks' business. Will shivers on the ground, but a spark of hope flares up seeing her step in. She spits back that the duel is officially over, and brutalizing a student any further is straight up torture. Bode desperately tries to cover his tracks. He scoffs, arguing that the kid is literally a healer who can just patch himself up. Veronica instantly shuts that down. She snaps that Will's mana tank is completely dry. He burned every last drop, surviving a gauntlet of back-to-back brawls. Furious, Bode lunges forward, betting she doesn't actually have the guts to slice him. Wrong move. Veronica's steel erupts with blinding energy, and both instructors launch themselves into a dead sprint for a lethal clash. Boom, the headmaster materializes out of nowhere, instantly killing the beef. He plants himself dead center, blocking Bode's path. He throws Veronica an apology for keeping her in the dark, then echoes his booming voice to declare the selection trials officially wrapped. He orders the entire crowd to clear the arena. As the hyped-up students filter out, Will desperately tries to cast a healing spell, but gets zero response. His magic is completely flatlined. Veronica scoops his battered body into her arms, whispering that he did incredibly. She begs him to just chill out and stop pushing himself past the breaking point. But those soft words don't numb the sting of defeat. Cut to the next day, Will wanders the campus, obsessing over the insane power gap he just witnessed. It completely fries his brain, trying to figure out how humanity ever got wiped out when absolute units like Bode existed. This just fuels his obsession to grind and become an absolute powerhouse. He steps into an office where the headmaster beams a huge smile at him. Spotting that Will is already looking fresh, the kid shrugs, explaining that the second his mana recharged, patching himself up took literally zero effort. The old man chuckles, betting that Will is going to completely breeze through the upcoming field exercises. This hits our boy like a jump scare. The headmaster casually drops the bomb since Will snagged first place in the crazy gauntlet. He secured the bag and passed. Oh, and Sirius and Erica passed too. Will is triggered, demanding answers, since Bode literally swore they all caught massive Fs. The headmaster smirks. It's a classic mind game they pull every single year. They trick the rookies into thinking they're doomed, just to force them to sweat and unlock their true potential. A handful always make the cut. Because the outside world is an actual death trap, Bode had to play the ultimate villain to toughen them up. It was toxic, sure, but it worked. Turns out, in the previous timeline, Bode was a literal war machine fighting on the bloody front lines. He was one of the legendary vanguards throwing his life away to stop humanity from getting wiped off the map. The headmaster shifts gears, pushing our guy to squad up with some heavy hitters from rival academies. He wants Will to roll out as the main damage dealer, so they can legally hunt down legit monsters for bounties. A cold chill hits Will. He suddenly realizes he's about to lock eyes with actual beasts for the very first time in the exact same nightmares that drove humanity to zero in his past timeline. These aren't just animals, they are terrifying mutants pulsing with raw magic. The world just labels them monsters. But here's the plot twist. Not every beast is born evil. Some only throw hands with humans because they're desperately trying not to starve. If people had actually bothered to decode their vibes instead of just blindly hacking at them, they could have coexisted as allies instead of sworn enemies. But fast forward 2 years, and this entire world is doomed to warp under the twisted glow of the crimson moon. Beasts bathed in that sick red light will not just go feral. Totally different breeds of alpha predators are going to forge an unholy alliance. Their one and only mission, erasing humanity off the face of the map. And if that bloodbath was not enough, another 2 years later, the Demon King himself crashes down into our reality. This nightmare domino effect will absolutely corner the human race, shattering entire empires and turning millions into collateral damage. The front lines will desperately scream for heavy-hitting offensive mages. But with the sheer chaos unfolding, those spellcasters are just going to get butchered right alongside the armored knights. Even the medics are not safe. Once the vanguard crumbles, the healers get massacred, leaving the bleeding survivors totally defenseless. By the time our boy bled out in his past life, the pool of able-bodied fighters was practically zero. If everyone just coasts through life blind to the incoming apocalypse, mankind goes extinct, period. He absolutely refuses to sit back and watch a rerun of that slaughter. He swears to grind like crazy, shattering every single limit from his past life just so he can solo that monstrous tidal wave. But honestly, he wants answers. He needs to expose the sick truth behind the crimson moon that sent those beasts into a frenzy. His ultimate endgame is ripping the calamity out by its roots. Catching that lethal spark in his eyes, the headmaster is seriously blown away. He sees pure potential radiating from Will. But it gets the old man sweating, wondering if his instructors are actually locking down security for this upcoming jungle drop. The headmaster swears they have heavy countermeasures prepped, but he does not sugarcoat his main agenda. He genuinely wants to push Will to his absolute peak. Cut to a bit later, Will is chilling outside the campus gates with Veronica when Bode marches right up to him. Will tries playing it cool, signaling he totally gets why Bode has been acting so edgy, but Bode just barks at him again and storms off. Classic tsundere move though. Right before dipping, he gruffly tells Will not to slack off in the woods, and right as his back is turned, he drops a barely there whisper thanking our guy for patching up Sirius. Sirius, who has been hovering in the background, steps into the spotlight to drop his own gratitude. He admits that he is finally ready to confront his flaws. He is determined to evolve into an absolute beast. He knows that as long as his heart keeps beating, his payback is guaranteed. And this time around, his vengeance is not just going to fade into thin air. Our hero hypes him up to keep grinding, and they lock in a solid fist bump, a silent, unbreakable pact. For Will, watching these heavy-hitting mages level up is a massive win. These guys are going to be god-tier teammates, absolute lifesavers for the brutal monster war looming on the horizon. Shortly after, the squad loads up into a carriage. A bumpy ride later, the driver calls out that the creeping shadows of Dunkel Forest are dead ahead. The briefing is about to drop. Veronica breaks the ice, revealing their main objective, a mercenary-style bounty hunting down goblin squads. Right in the murky guts of Dunkel Forest, she takes charge, sorting out a trio of rookies from the Schwartz, Heilish, and Gilburn factions. Then she locks eyes with Will, dropping the roster details. He is being tossed into a 4-man strike team, backed up by a veteran instructor from one of the rival schools. Cue Erica stepping up. She nervously asks if the squad lineups are locked in. Veronica hits her with a chilling smirk, confirming that they are permanently glued together for this raid. Now Erica is secretly terrified of Veronica's intense energy, but honestly, Will counts it as a massive relief compared to being dumped with total randoms. Fast forward a bit. The carriage slams to a halt. They have hit the drop zone. As boots hit the dirt, Veronica spots the students from Gilburn, who have already locked down the perimeter. Staring at the crowd, our boy gets a flash of nostalgia, remembering how painfully isolated and friendless he was in his first life. Out of nowhere, a blur of motion blitzes Will. A girl literally tackles him into a massive hug, screaming about how desperately she has been hunting for him. Total panic mode engages. His brain short circuits, trying to place her face until she drops a massive flex. She is Marie Goldgrand, the actual principal of Schwartz Academia. Oh, and she just happens to be the granddaughter of the legendary Alnaram Goldgrand. Our guy's jaw straight up hits the floor. The memories from his past life violently click into place. He totally remembers playing medic for this exact girl. Back at the principal's estate no less, spotting her in this death trap of a forest is wild, and he instantly wonders how she has been holding up. Catching his worried vibe, she instantly promises him she has been doing amazing. But then the guilt trip kicks in, and she starts bowing in apology. She admits she has been kicking herself for never giving him a proper thank you back then. He just waves it off with a chill smile, insisting it was not a big deal at all. But Marie is not having it. She aggressively insists on paying back her life debt. Then she drops a reality check. She was born with zero talent for slinging spells, like absolutely zilch. So she pivoted hard, enrolling at Gilburn Academy to grind her heart out as a pure blade-swinging swordswoman. And thanks to that insane blood, sweat, and tears hustle, she actually shattered expectations, clutching the #1 spot in the Academy's brutal placement exams. A soft laugh escapes her lips when she catches our main guy staring in absolute awe. Honestly, he is genuinely moved by her massive glow-up. Just a few months back, she was totally bedridden, fighting for her health. Yet in record time, she skyrocketed straight to the elite tier. Grabbing his hand, she drops the big news: they have been teamed up in the exact same party, perfectly matching up their insane skill sets. She swears to give it her all and prove she has got his back. Right then, it suddenly clicks for him. He finally decodes what the principal's hidden message meant. He remembers those heavy words about looking after her. But before his mind can spiral, she yanks him by the arm to go meet the new arrivals. The transfer squad from Heilig just rolled in. Watching from a distance, Veronica and Erica are totally caught off guard by the warm, upbeat energy. Seeing the duo acting so tight is wild to them. Over by the Heilig carriage, Marie calls out, checking if Ulan and Turf are hiding inside. Woolen casually steps out of the ride, flashing an easygoing smile and telling everyone to chill out. He drops a super friendly greeting to the crowd. Plot twist, he announces himself as the official mentor leading their squad. Woolen is actually a big shot instructor over at Hyliak Academia, and here is the crazy part. In Will's past life, Woolen was literally the most legendary healing mage of his entire generation. Realizing they are officially teammates now, sends a massive rush of pure hype straight through Will's veins. Right after Turf climbs out of the carriage, and Marie steps right up to introduce herself. But Turf instantly freezes in his tracks. His eyes lock onto their intertwined hands. Trying to play it cool, he demands an official introduction to our protagonist. Will steps up and casually drops his name. Turf immediately pegs him as a heavy-hitting attack mage. Breaking the tension, Ulan steps in, telling the rookies they are totally free to operate however they want. He claims he is just going to hang back and watch the show. This super laid-back vibe completely stuns the whole squad. Will marches straight up to Ulan, asking for permission to call him master. Ulan raises an eyebrow, asking what the catch is. Will comes clean. He explains that he is a healing mage too, but he has basically been winging it without a real pro to guide his training. He begs Ulan to take him under his wing. Honestly, Woolen has already heard the rumors about Will, so he instantly agrees to level up his healing magic. Not wanting to be left out, Marie sprints over loudly, demanding that she gets to call Woolen master too. If Will gets to do it, she wants in. Standing off to the side, Veronica watches this chaotic but wholesome squad, bonding perfectly. Fast forward to the actual monster hunting mission. Every team gets their marching orders, setting up an old wooden hut as their primary base camp. The main goblin spawn zone is buried deep inside the dark forest. Wasting zero time, Ulan, Marie, and Will lock in, deciding to rush the front lines right away. Meanwhile, Turf, playing the classic support role, is ordered to hold down the fort back at base camp. He is sticking to the old-school textbook rules, dodging the danger zone. As the main trio marches deeper into the goblin territory, Marie questions Will's strategy, asking if he is seriously just going to play white mage in a bloodbath. He does not even flinch. Telling her to chill out, he drops the master plan. he will go full overseer mode, giving them the green light to go absolute goblin slayer. While they go crazy, he will be watching the battlefield like a hawk. Taking his strategy to heart, the duo realizes their new boss has literally zero limits holding them back. They snap straight into kill mode. With one blindingly fast strike, Marie absolutely shreds through a massive mob of monsters. Our main guy's jaw practically hits the floor. His mind flashes back to just months ago, when she could not even stand up from her sickbed. The action dials up to 11. Marie, the fierce blonde warrior, unleashes a storm of brutal sword slashes, tearing through the goblin frontline. Watching her go totally berserk, Will realizes she is basically a one-woman army capable of wiping the whole map. But the forest is crawling with them, and a fresh wave of goblins swarms out of the shadows. Reading the battlefield, his mentor Ren points out that, while the blonde girl is a beast at rushing in getting swarmed is her weak point. He immediately barks an order for our hero to jump into the fray. A savage grin crosses Will's face. The adrenaline kicks in. It has been way too long since he got his hands dirty fighting monsters. Sparking his magic, he launches himself into the chaos, slicing through the green horde with deadly precision. After wiping them out, gasping for air, he stares at the combat knife gifted to him by Professor Venerica, the icy white-haired instructor. This blade is insanely sharp, and it seriously saved his life out there. Meanwhile, the blonde is absolutely starstruck by Will's brutal combat skills. Their mentor officially calls it, announcing the zone is clear, and it is time to head back to base. But right then, the blonde girl suddenly realizes she is barely sweating. Her body feels completely weightless. Stepping up, the hero reveals the secret, explaining that they have been juiced up by their mentor's insane passive healing buffs. It hits him right then. The mentor's real power is dropping massive recovery spells so smoothly that you do not even feel the magic working. The rest of the world might be totally clueless, but our guy knows the truth. His mentor is straight up the ultimate healer alive. Crashing at their safe house that night, they're greeted by a kid named Turf. He's super relieved to see the squad roll up without a single scratch from the day's grind. The blonde powerhouse Marie admits she totally gets why their mentor is a top-tier medic, but she's low-key mind-blown by his insane battle IQ. Dropping some wisdom, the mentor casually explains that the front lines are an absolute bloodbath. Patching up warriors in the heat of combat naturally forced him to level up his own tactical survival skills. Turf chimes in, dropping the fact that this guy is constantly bouncing between war zones, which totally explains why he basically never teaches normal classes. Taking this all in, our hero realizes this absolute legend will dive straight into hell if it means saving a life. Letting humanity lose a goat like him, not an option. And thanks to his future knowledge, he knows the clock is ticking. There's still a window before the tragic timeline where his mentor gets wiped out. To rewrite history, our boy makes a brutal vow. He absolutely refuses to let tragedy strike twice. While the squad chills and recovers, the camera pans to a grimy hidden cave where a swarm of goblins is brewing. They're plotting a massive wave of absolute chaos. Cut to the next dawn, the squad gears up and plunges back into the wild to hunt down these green menaces. Flexing everything they picked up from their last scraps, their coordination is practically flawless now. But mid-patrol mentor Ren completely kills the vibe, ordering a hard retreat. Our hero is totally baffled by the sudden pullback. They haven't clashed with a single mob all day. Breaking the silence, the mentor lays out the cold, hard facts. Goblins are insanely aggressive over their turf. The second anyone steps onto their land, it's usually an instant bloodbath. It should have been a war zone like yesterday. Yet they're deep in enemy territory, and it's a total ghost town. The eerie silence screams a massive trap. Ren makes the call to fall back and sync up with the other squads as soon as possible. Marie quickly points out that Professor Venerica's crew has a forward camp just around the corner, making it the perfect safe haven. They sprint through the woods and finally breach the campsite. But what they see next makes their blood run ice cold. The hero's classmate Erica is brutally hogtied and completely helpless. Marie doesn't even think. She sprints to cut her loose, but the second she steps forward, the ground vanishes, plunging her straight into a spiked pitfall. It's an ambush. A lethal volley of arrows streaks out of the shadows, aiming right for the mentor's skull. But in a flash, our boy parries every single one. Peering into the darkness, he realizes they are completely boxed in by a massive, drooling goblin horde. Marie violently hauls herself out of the trap, gripping her weapon. They brace for a brutal showdown, but something doesn't add up. Our hero's mind is racing. This level of coordinated monster threat isn't supposed to spawn until the Red Moon event, and that nightmare scenario is still 2 whole years away. With the horde closing in fast, he ignites his aura. He slams his hands down, summoning a squad of hulking wooden golems. Barking orders, he tells Marie to ditch the frontal assault and flank them from the shadows. While his wooden giants tank the frontline aggro, she spots the perfect blind spot and unleashes a devastating shockwave slash. The strike instantly vaporizes half the mob. Any ugly straggler trying to sneak up on her gets brutally sliced to ribbons by our boy. Loving their insane sync, Mentor Ren dashes to free Erica, but right as he moves, the ground explodes and a hulking boss monster erupts from the dirt, launching a lethal blindside attack. The hero's heart drops into his stomach. He absolutely refuses to let his master die like a side character, but dropping jaws everywhere, the mentor smoothly sidesteps the giant beast like it's moving in slow motion. Exploiting the wide-open gap, he gently taps a glowing rune onto the beast's spine, causing the massive titan to instantly faceplant into the dirt. Our boy is totally stunned and asks how he pulled off that insane dodge. The mentor just smirks, revealing he actually copied that footwork straight from watching the hero. But he keeps it strictly pacifist, clarifying he just knocked the boss out cold. He's a healer after all, he doesn't deal fatal damage. Wasting zero time, the squad grabs the tied-up classmate and books it out of the death zone, leaving the goblin territory in the dust. Ren blasts her with a wave of restorative magic, snapping her back to reality. The hero immediately demands answers: what went down, and why was she flying solo? Still shaking, Erica explains their raid went perfectly yesterday, but she admits that whenever she drops her guard, disaster usually strikes. When she opened her eyes this morning, Professor Venerica had completely vanished, leaving behind nothing but a cryptic note. The message basically told her to lock down the perimeter. While she was frantically trying to figure out a game plan with her two squad mates, they pushed her to go scout for the missing professor. But the moment she stepped into the deep woods, a sick, sugary scent hit her lungs, and just like that, everything went pitch black. Piecing the puzzle together, the mentor realizes these filthy goblins actually weaponized an airborne sleep toxin against her. A dark shadow crosses his face. Goblins teaming up with a massive ogre. That kind of cross-species alliance is terrifyingly rare, but there's zero time to play detective right now. He barks an order they need to secure Erica's main camp before the horde catches up, and finally link back up with her two squad mates. Fast forward a bit, they hit the base camp only to find it completely wrecked. The blonde girl stands there stunned, wondering what the heck just went down. Goblins are notoriously territorial and basically never leave their zones, which means a camp set up way outside their turf should have been totally untouchable. Catching sight of this carnage, our boy Will instantly clocks the grim reality. This is a highly coordinated, premeditated ambush on humanity. It is a savage behavior you strictly see after a blood moon drops. Right then, his mentor taps into his sensory skills to scan the perimeter and detects that their two missing friends have already bolted somewhere else. Without missing a beat, he orders the squad to split up. He decides to track the runaways down himself, instructing Will and the girls to sprint back to the boys' safe zone and evacuate the woods entirely. Will gives a firm nod, and once they finally crash at the safe house, a massive wave of relief hits them. The kid is totally unharmed, and even whipping up some grub. But our hero cuts the chill vibes short, telling him they'll drop the full story later because they need to bounce right now. But the second they step foot outside the cabin, pure nightmare fuel. That exact same massive ogre is looming right there, backed by an entire swarm of bloodthirsty goblins. Staring down death, Will turns to the girls and lays it out. It is strictly a 3 versus army situation, and they have to butcher these monsters right here, right now. He genuinely believes they have the firepower to clutch this win. He instantly commands the blonde swordsman to hold the line and avoid pushing too deep, unlike her last reckless stunt. All she needs to do is dish out clean, basic strikes. Tapping into his magic, he then conjures up a massive wooden while barking at his classmate Erica to roast the goblin frontline with her fire spells. Catching the drift perfectly, she unleashes a blazing inferno that pins the absolute majority of the goblin horde down for a hot minute. However, our boy spots a terrifying detail. The behemoth ogre is just casually strolling through the scorching flames like it is nothing. Reacting instantly, he commands his golem to engage. The wooden beast violently grapples the ogre, creating a flawless window of opportunity for the blonde girl. She capitalizes hard, unleashing a devastating sword slash that sends the colossal monster crashing backward into the dirt. She is riding high on their god-tier teamwork, but that hype dies instantly when the ogre's shredded flesh literally starts knitting itself back together. Will immediately realizes that just spamming basic attacks isn't going to put this freak of nature in the ground. He knows they desperately need a fresh, hard-hitting strategy. But while he is calculating their next play, the ogre straight up violently chucks a live goblin right at his face. Will casually deflects the living projectile and slices the goblin into ribbons. Across the field, the blonde warrior is relentlessly swatting away several goblins of her own, and shouts out that she is locking in and sticking to his battle plan down to the letter. Hearing her resolve, our hero suddenly pieces it all together. With Erica raining fire on the mob and the blonde girl holding the frontline aggro, Will gets the ultimate green light to focus entirely on the ogre. Launching himself straight at the beast, he lands a brutal strike on its torso. The monster absolutely loses its mind in a fit of rage, but that blind fury gives Will the perfect opening. He ruthlessly blasts his life rampage spell point blank into the ogre's spine. The raw magical pressure causes the giant's entire body to violently detonate, wiping it off the map instantly. Watching the gory fireworks, Will confirms the boss monster is officially done regenerating. Now it is just a simple cleanup job with the remaining goblin trash. Fast forward a few minutes, the squad successfully wipes out the rest of the green pests, standing tall and totally hyped up over their insane clutch. But the victory high is short-lived, as Will is still stressing hard over where the heck the rest of the Academy squads are holding up. Out of nowhere, he spots a massive cyclone tearing up the distant skyline. He instantly knows that is Sirius flexing his wind powers, and realizes that tracking that storm is their golden ticket to grouping back up with the rest of the survivors. After grinding through the terrain, they finally hit a clearing where the Wind Boy and the allied teams are standing over a massive pile of slaughtered goblins. The Academy's strongest teacher steps up, demanding to know where Will's mentor Rin went off to. Speak of the devil, Rin struts out of the brush right on cue, flanking the two runaway students, who had gone totally off the grid earlier. A wave of relief hits our hero, seeing his master safe and sound, while the mentor coolly hypes Will up, tossing him major props for solo killing a whole boss-tier ogre without taking a single scratch. The overpowered teacher breathes a heavy sigh of relief, seeing everyone alive, but then the panic sets back in. Where in the world is Professor Venerica? He lays down the absolute law, stating nobody is evacuating this hellscape until they get eyes on them. Stepping up, the mentor volunteers to hold the fort and babysit the exhausted students. He pitches a solid game plan. Anyone with actual heavy-hitting skills needs to dive back into the danger zone to find her. Vouching for their insane power levels, the head teacher immediately tags Sirius and Will for the rescue mission. Pushing deep into the eerie woods, Will supercharges his hearing senses. Within minutes, he locks onto Professor Venerica's location, finding her completely untouched and safe. But his blood runs absolutely cold when he notices what she is gripping. It is a glowing crimson stone, the exact same cursed relic tied to the apocalyptic blood moon event. Caught off guard, the professor questions what the heck he is doing snooping around. Will keeps it real, dropping the hard truth that the local monsters just went totally feral, and they need to dip out of this forest immediately. She totally agrees to fall back, but Will isn't letting it slide flat out, demanding to know why she is holding that sketchy rock. Looking incredibly guilty, she hits him with a tense apology, claiming she absolutely cannot leak any details right now, but heavily promises she isn't pulling any villain moves. Begrudgingly accepting that for now, they trek back to regroup with the squad. Come the next morning, the entire battered crew finally hauls it back to the academy, leaving our hero. Our boy seriously questions if the professor has dark ties to the Crimson Moon, but he quickly brushes off the heavy suspicion. After all, she was his most ride-or-die comrade in his past life. Right in the middle of these thoughts, he spots Professor Veronica, locked in a hushed, intense conversation with an upperclassman. Eavesdropping from the shadows, he catches her begging for some sudden time off, brushing it off as a quote-unquote personal emergency. The second she walks away, his brain connects the dots. This has to be linked to the Crimson Moon. Determined to dig up the actual truth, he decides to shadow her every move. After tailing her under the radar for a hot minute, our protagonist trails her straight into a bustling town. He keeps telling himself he is only stalking her to prove her absolute innocence. Glancing at his surroundings, intense nostalgia hits him. In his first life, right after he graduated from the Healer Academy Beast, outbreaks had already completely skyrocketed, forcing him onto brutal front lines all over the continent. He is absolutely positive he has set foot in this exact town before. Suddenly his eyes lock onto Veronica grabbing a sweet honey bun from a local bakery. That tiny detail unlocks a core memory from his past timeline. A quiet, peaceful moment where they split that exact same pastry. Back then, he had shyly admitted he was just a country kid who rarely got to taste luxury treats. Who grew up wealthy in a city merchant family, was totally used to them. She had laughed, confessing she could never resist a good bakery. It was her ultimate guilty pleasure. She had told him that in their dangerous line of work, absolutely anyone could drop dead tomorrow, so she lived to savor every single bite of life. Then, with a dead serious look, she asked if push ever came to shove, would he actually have her back? And without missing a beat, our hero swore he would. Snapping back to reality, the crushing guilt hits him. He had promised to be her shield, but in the end, he completely failed to protect her. Not this time, though. In this second life, he is fully determined to rewrite their tragic ending. But to pull that off, he desperately needs to expose whatever she is hiding. Continuing his stealth mission, he watches her slip into an eerily quiet, abandoned church. Our hero instantly fires up his stealth abilities, completely masking his aura, and sneaks right into the shadows behind her. Inside the creepy sanctuary, she links up with some sketchy purple-haired punk. The guy smirks, claiming she was summoned for top-tier syndicate business. He demands she hand over the artifact they previously negotiated for, and without hesitating, Veronica tosses him that highly suspicious glowing red crystal. The thug's eyes light up with pure greed. He hypes up how this little rock is the final key to unlocking their cult's ultimate master plan, declaring they are finally inching closer to the Crimson Moon's epic return. Catching this conversation, our hero's worst fears are brutally validated. She is totally knee-deep in the Moon's dark syndicate. But right at the absolute worst possible second, his stealth buff completely times out. Instantly, a vicious water dragon locks onto his scent and lunges for the kill. But before the beast can shred him, Veronica intercepts the strike, shielding our boy with her own body. The purple-haired creep scowls, aggressively snapping that he explicitly ordered her to show up solo. He demands to know why she dragged some random kid along, dramatically sighing that he actually thought she had the guts to join their dark brotherhood. Veronica stays ice cold, calmly stating that the kid crashing their secret meeting was just a massive unlucky accident. The thug chuckles, offering her a twisted deal. Execute the boy right now, and she is still in the club. But she completely rejects his sick offer, boldly declaring she only played along to gather intel on their shady operation. Hearing this massive plot twist, our hero's brain practically short-circuits, trying to process the absolute chaos. Veronica finally drops the backstory. On the exact day she ditched the academy base, she picked up some nasty magical vibes out in the woods. She stumbled upon a rabid mutant beast alongside that glowing red gem. The second she injected her mana into it, the crystal flared up with blood-red energy, and this purple-haired freak literally materialized out of thin air. He slapped her with an ult if she wanted the real scoop on his identity and the artifact. She had to play by 2 rules. Number 1, constantly pump her magic into the gem to keep it illuminated, acting as a twisted little test of her power reserves. Number 2, keep her mouth completely shut and blindly track them to this creepy hideout, just to prove she was not going to snitch to the authorities. The professor totally smirks, admitting she faked being a dark recruit so she could infiltrate their ranks like an absolute boss and expose the entire syndicate from the inside. A massive wave of relief washes over our hero. His favorite professor has not broken bad after all. Realizing he got massively played, the thug gets incredibly petty. He violently chucks the magical red rock straight into the indoor pool, instantly triggering a whole pack of aquatic dragons into a rabid frenzy. With the beasts gearing up to completely massacre them, our boy confidently brags he can easily solo half the mob. But before he can even flex, Veronica launches herself forward, violently decapitating every single dragon with one devastating slash. But the victory is short-lived. To her absolute shock, the headless monsters start rapidly healing, totally shrugging off the fatal damage. Catching on to the glitch, our hero aggressively springboards off the ground, sinking his dagger deep into one of the freaks. The second the blade connects, he notices something crazy. The monster's flesh is freakishly mushy. Trusting his gut that this is a giant illusion, he violently yells at Veronica to step back. Firing up his physical enhancement buffs, he completely prepares to expose the enemy's dirty little trick. Will rips the dragon backward, forcing the beast to instantly drop its disguise. Turns out those dragons were completely fake. They were actually just the tentacles of a colossal octopus-like abomination launching sneak attacks from the shadows. Right then, the rogue mercenary realizes his ultimate bioweapon is exposed. Smirking, he mutters that it is time to get his own hands dirty. Whipping out a crackling heavy-duty spear, he charges. The hero quickly barks an order, telling the professor to solo the tentacle freak, explaining her enchanted blade will slice right through its squishy flesh. When she hesitates to leave his side, he hits her with a massive physical buff. He swears he will back her up the second he trashes this spear-wielding creep. Exploding off the ground with insane speed, the hero closes the gap, slashing viciously with his dagger. But the thug parries it like it is nothing, sweeping his spear to knock the hero skidding backward across the dirt. Still, the thug feels a stinging nick on his cheek. Flexing his own power, he instantly casts healing magic to erase the fresh scar. Catching that move out of the corner of her eye, Professor Venerica shouts a warning this enemy is exactly like him. A rare hybrid who can dual-wield healing and hardcore combat. The thug chuckles, praising the hero's raw potential, and mentions he wants to recruit him into his circle to meet the big bosses running his shadow syndicate. He pitches an invite to join their cult-like order, but our guy instantly shoots it down, promising he would rather die than be their pawn. Taking the rejection personally, the brute declares that the hero is officially a dead man. He launches himself forward spear tip, aimed for a fatal strike, but Will easily deflects the lethal blow. Mid-clash, his mind races, analyzing the mystery. He is still in the dark about so much: the secretive order, the legendary redstone, and how someone can manipulate both healing and destruction magic simultaneously. But one thing is crystal clear: beating the truth out of this guy is his only ticket to stopping the impending apocalyptic tragedy. Fueled by that thought, he delivers a crushing roundhouse kick that sends the spearman sliding backward. Shocked by this raw power, the thug breaks out in a cold sweat, realizing he might actually lose this brawl if he holds back. So he triggers a forbidden skill called body corruption. In a grotesque display, his right arm violently mutates into a hulking monstrous claw. The hero glares, knowing straight up that this freakish mutation defies all basic buffs or healing spells. He fiercely demands who gave him this dark power. Spitting blood, the thug confesses that the Order's dark scriptures taught him everything. He vents about his pathetic past life, drifting aimlessly as a bottom-tier combat healer constantly bullied and bossed around by stuck-up magical elites. He screams that the world is crawling with human trash who do not deserve salvation, and the Order finally gifted him absolute power and a true mission. They let his true potential shine. Disgusted by his twisted logic, our hero brutally shuts down his villain monologue, calling his worldview pure garbage. He warns that this path will only end in a bloodbath for innocent people, and then he lunges in for another lethal strike. But the mutant blocks it effortlessly. Sweeping his colossal beast arm, he smashes the hero, sending him rocketing backward through a solid brick wall. Trapped in the rubble, flashbacks hit him hard. He remembers his master, Ren Professor Veronica, and every single soul he watched die in his past life. Those painful memories ignite a fire in his chest. He forces himself up, channeling top-tier healing magic to instantly patch his shattered bones. Wiping off the dust, he drops his voice to an icy glare, promising to show this freak absolutely zero mercy and secure a brutally painful kill. They collide again in a flurry of explosive punches, but this time, the hero is completely outplaying him, landing devastating critical hits. Spotting a split-second gap in his defense, he unloads a jaw-shattering uppercut that sends the brute staggering backward, coughing up blood with major internal damage. Catching his breath, the hero glances over at Professor Veronica and realizes she totally shredded that giant octopus demon into pieces with her elite sword skills. She pants, noting that the beast's healing factor was ridiculously overpowered, which is why the boss fight dragged out so long. Nodding, the hero slowly marches over to the crippled mercenary for an intense interrogation session. Pressing his cold blade right against the guy's throat, he demands to know the Order's true master plan. But the fanatic keeps his mouth completely shut. Refusing to be a snitch and betray his dark masters, the thug makes a crazy move. He suddenly shoves his neck forward, impaling himself on the hero's dagger. He instantly commits suicide right there on the spot. As the life leaves his eyes, a brief wave of peace washes over him, knowing he stayed fiercely loyal to his evil comrades till the bitter end. But wait, he suddenly gasps for air, snapping back to life with zero injuries. Absolutely horrified, he panics, trying to process this impossible glitch in reality. He can still feel the phantom agony of bleeding out. Staring down at him, the hero casually explains that he force-healed his corpse a microsecond after his heart stopped. Hearing this impossible flex, the thug stammers that resurrecting the dead is completely impossible for any human healer. The hero just smirks, declaring he is far from normal and is destined to be the absolute god of healing. His eyes darken as he drops the ultimate threat: he can just keep killing him and bringing him back from the dead in an endless loop of torture. He orders the guy to spill every single secret about the cult. Facing eternal torment, the tough guy finally breaks down in pure, shaking terror. Cornered with zero options left, he finally decides to spill the truth, but right at that exact second, his body starts glitching out in the most horrifying way. Catching on to the lethal danger, the professor completely freaks out, screaming at our boy to step back right now. Bam! Without a single warning, the thug literally erupts into a gruesome explosion, getting wiped off the map instantly, while our hero scrambles desperately to cast a healing spell. But it is a total wash. His life force is already drained to absolute zero, leaving our guy completely gutted over the massive failure. They just watched their one and only solid lead literally blow up in their faces, but Professor Venerico steps in to cool his nerves, reminding him that, at least, he made it out in one piece before suggesting they finally bounce back to Schwartz Academy. And while they are cruising back, she drops some heavy thoughts. She points out that this whole chaotic mess was not for nothing, since they basically just uncovered some insanely dark and twisted anomalies lurking out there. Honestly, she admits she is super hyped that she actually tagged along for this wild field training. She confesses that the only reason she forced her way into this mission was because she was dead set worried about him, which prompts our hero to flip the script and ask her exactly how she cooked up that absolute big brain strategy of weaponizing still mana for actual combat. She flexes her backstory a bit, explaining that growing up in a hardcore merchant family gave her endless opportunities to network with both top-tier healers and heavy-hitting battle mages. Plus, she admits she actually heard someone drop a totally similar theory, way back when she was just a kid, but right in the middle of this deep lore, drop her eyes lock onto a local bakery. Instantly distracted, she drags him over to snag some fresh pastries, and after soaking up some desperately needed chill vibes, they finally make it back to campus. Of course, our boy immediately gets roasted by the staff for going completely missing in action without a pass. Meanwhile, cut to a super shady office, where a literal snake woman slithers through the door. She steps in only to find her terrifying pet serpent has already brutally unalived, a young boy inside leaving her to just coldly stare down at a glowing red. With a wicked smirk, she vows to blindly follow the dark instructions, no matter the cost, fully ready to unleash absolute chaos and spread as much destruction as physically possible.